Also those joining us online. Good morning, and first we will hear from our director, Jason Sumners.
Commissioners, morning staff. We got a full room because we got a full agenda today. Lots of great topics. I look forward to the discussion. So we're going to jump right in. Yeah, one of the great things we get to do is recognize the great work of our team. And in February at the Missouri Natural Resources Conference, the Missouri chapter of the Wildlife Society recognized regional administrators Deb Burns and Matt Boyer for their career accomplishments in wildlife management. Deb Burns, the Kansas City Regional Administrator, was awarded the E. Sidney Stevens Award. The E. Sidney Stevens Award is presented to individuals who have made outstanding contributions to wildlife conservation in Missouri. Matt Boyer, our Southeast Regional Administrator, was awarded the G. Andy Runge Award. The G. Andy Runge Award is presented to individuals that have made significant positive impacts on wildlife conservation. And Joel Porath, Statewide Resource Management Branch, our Wildlife Section Chief, was recognized by the Conservation Federation of Missouri for his outstanding lifetime achievements in the field of conservation. So again, a huge shout out to the great work of our MDC team. We'll start off with a few private and public land success stories our team members have shared over the last few months. In Central Region, MDC staff participated in the Lincoln University's Finca Fest. This event is a free, family-friendly fall event held at the Finca Eco Farm in Jefferson City's Tier 1 neighborhood. The fest celebrates sustainable agriculture, urban homesteading, and community learning. In Kansas City region, staff sunk 30 trees, creating 15 different brush pile complexes in Spring Fork Lakes on the south side of Sedalia to improve fish habitat in this community lake. In addition, the department recently entered into a cooperative agreement with Sedalia to manage the lands around Spring Fork Lake. The property is adjacent to the Commission's new addition to Paintbrush Prairie Conservation Area that included over 50 acres of remnant prairie. In Central Region, interns Rose Corder and Cora Wood conducted a bumblebee survey at Clifty Creek Natural Area in our Tier 1 community, our Natural Community Tier 1 in Marys County last summer. On private land staff in the Northwest region hosted a workshop, landowner burn workshops throughout the year across the region in an effort to assist landowners in meeting their prescribed fire certification requirements. This busy time of year for landowners and the department to complete prescribed fire, and I think many of the regions, due to the really good weather and the fact that we weren't doing CWD activities, completed many of their priority burns and a number of other areas to catch up on some things that have lagged behind. On the community conservation side of things, the St. Louis Community Conservation Team recently held their 3rd annual Community Conservation Forum at Queenie Park with 130 attendees. The forum's theme was One Health and featured plenary speakers from Lincoln University and St. Louis University. Breakout sessions included presentations from partners such as the St. Louis Audubon's BirdSafe STL program, Seed STL, Bell Fountain Cemetery and Arboretum, St. Louis County Library, Great Rivers Greenway, and MDC's very own volunteer engagement specialist, Brian Woldrup. The forum also featured a science branch workshop by Ellie Prentice, Caleb O'Brien, and Angela Calando, which selected forum attendees worked together in an interactive breakout aimed at identifying the myriad of benefits of nature in communities and envisioning opportunities to build a collaborative conservation culture in the state. On the right, Assistant Wildlife Biologist Liam Conley recently organized 6 volunteer work days on MDC urban wildacre sites and engaged the public in stewardship to tackle bush honeysuckle problems at Bittersweet Woods Conservation Area and Beckemeyer Conservation Area. Volunteers were recruited from Missouri's natural naturalist teams, as well as residents who border the conservation area and were interested in getting more involved with their local green spaces. Liam's work days are a great example of how engaging with the public and other local conservation organizations can enable small crews to get more boots on the ground to get good habitat work done, increasing our overall impact on invasive species. The MDC's internship program has been very successful. The program this year will have 13 positions posted for students and future conservationists to compete for. The interns will have the opportunity to work with the department staff in various roles and duties with this upcoming summer. In addition, the department is piloting a new internship program with the University of Central Missouri, State Fair Community College, Missouri Prairie Foundation, and Missouri Conservation Heritage Foundation in the Lone Buffalo District in Kansas City region. Interviews were held March 10th, and one student from each school will have the opportunity to work in the Lone Buffalo District on Missouri Prairie Foundation properties and other parts of the Kansas City region this summer. If successful, the students will receive a $5,000 scholarship from the Missouri Conservation Heritage Foundation. If they have a successful review, they will have the opportunity to work at times during the spring, fall, and summer, and return the following summer for another work season. And if successful, will receive another $5,000 scholarship for this foundation. Missouri deer hunters had another successful Missouri deer hunting season with more than 300,000 deer harvested and checked during the 2025-2026 season. Top counties for overall deer harvest included Franklin County with over 6,700 deer checked, Howell County with nearly 5,500 deer, Callaway County with 5,346 deer. Hunters harvested 275,000 deer during the 2024-25 hunting season, so this year was a significant increase from that. The 2025-26 harvest total was slightly above the 5-year average, and the sixth time the harvest total has exceeded 300,000 deer. We had 4 non-fatal, self-inflicted firearms relating hunting incidents reported during the season, with one involving deer hunter and others involving other game. Permit sales were down slightly from last year, with the most notable decline occurring among non-resident firearm permit holders, which was down 7.7% from last year. We're all coming off the exciting MoNASP tournament. So the Missouri Natural Archery in the School tournament was held in Branson last weekend, with more than 4,300 student archers from across the state competing. The National Archery in the Schools program is the second largest state archery tournament in the United States. A huge thanks to our staff for assisting with the tournament and the Conservation Heritage Foundation for organizing the event. I'd be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to provide a proud uncle plug. My niece, once again, had a very successful tournament. She won the 5th grade bullseye, or 5th grade 3D, and tied for the 5th grade bullseye. So again, proud moment for me. We also often talk about the economic impacts of conservation, and the MoNASP State Tournament is a great example of this. The 4-day tournament generates an estimated $9.2 million in annual economic impact for Branson, bringing thousands of archers and families to city hotels, restaurants, and shows. And I'll ad-lib a little bit here. We had a cabinet meeting in the middle of last week, right at the start of MoNASP, with the governor's cabinet, and I mentioned that we were, excited about MoNASP happening. They're like, "Oh yeah, we know. About half our staff are headed for Branson." So it has a significant impact, certainly here in Central Missouri. Education continues to connect new audiences with nature and Missouri's natural resources. MDC staff from Education, Protection, and RRM partnered with the Missouri Trappers Association for Beginners Trapping Clinic on January 10th and 11th. Throughout day one, participants learned about trapping regulations and the various types of traps, and they practiced making and setting traps before heading out to set them at Merrimack Spring Park in the late afternoon. They returned the following morning to learn how to check the traps and process their catch. Each participant skinned and fleshed at least one animal. Deep appreciation to the James Foundation, who's a huge partner of ours, for the use of their facilities and the grounds for the clinic. Our nature and education centers continue to connect people of all ages, backgrounds, and abilities to nature. A few highlights include the Springfield's Nature Rocks event targeting 18 to 34-year-olds. It featured 2 local indie rock bands inspired by nature. Both bands included lyrics related directly to nature and engaged the audiences in nature trivia between songs. In addition to the band, staff hosted discovery tables on Missouri black bears, Missouri reptiles, and amphibians. Participants also enjoyed an outdoor fire pit and drinks from a local coffee truck. The Discovery Center Bows of Natives program has evolved into a holiday tradition in Kansas City. Participants create wreaths and swag made from mostly native greenery and decorated with berries, seed pods, leaves, nuts, and more, all while learning about these native materials, many of which were collected from the Discovery Center native garden landscapes. On the other side of the state in St. Louis, families ventured out to Forest 44 Conservation Area for Amphibian Night, an exciting night learning about native amphibians. And at Shepherd of the Hills in Branson, they hosted more than 6,000 visitors and more than 1,000 programs and group attendees in December. A picture on this slide is from Saturday of after Christmas. The day alone brought 1,300 people. Between visitors and program attendees, Shepherd reached more than 143,000 people in the first calendar year of the new facility. So excited about that. Through hands-on activities, knowledgeable staff, and accessible trails, these centers work to develop conservation awareness and ensure that Missourians have the opportunity to experience the natural world right in their own communities. The department currently supports 2 5-person habitat strike teams in partnership with Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever and Shaw Nature Reserve. These crews have been highly successful at implementing priority habitat management across key landscapes. A key factor in their success is that these teams are managed and insured by PFQF, and they can operate across any ownership boundary and jurisdiction. These teams have reduced barriers for landowners who want to conduct habitat management but have been hesitant or unable to afford the upfront costs associated with cost share programs. They also address projects that contractors may not pursue due to small scale or remote location. In coordination with our local private lands conservationists, the teams have built strong, trusted relationships with landowners and partners in their regions. In addition to private lands work, these teams increase capacity of MDC staff by assisting on public land projects. To date, they have implemented more than 2,000 acres of habitat management work across public and private lands. The Shaw team also contributes to community conservation, and over the past 2 years has successfully completed 4 prescribed burns in St. Louis City. A huge shout out to these crews for their outstanding work and impact. Another exciting moment over the last month, the opening of the trout parks started with a big bang with good weather and attendance. Roaring River led the way with just short of 2,500 tags sold, and the 4 parks had a grand total of 7,979 tags sold. Over 25,000 fish were stocked in the streams at the Siren, and anglers seemed to be pleased with the number and size. There were over 60 lunkers caught at the parks, with the largest rainbow trout weighing 8.1 pounds caught at Roaring River. A huge thank you to staff for their hard work to make this a success. Thank you for the commissioners for attending opening day at several of our parks. And a huge shout out to the Missouri Legislative Sportsman's Caucus who attended the opener at Montauk. Stream crews monitor the health of Missouri stream communities. This work provides important information regarding watersheds and aquatic species. Recently, state and federally endangered Topeka shiner was found as a result of a stocking that was thought to be unsuccessful. This is a little bit of a biological Easter egg hunt. MDC connects people to nature in a variety of ways, including providing places for people to go and the opportunity to participate in nature-based recreation. Staff have recently been working on MDC's first recreational use strategy. This planning effort is in ensuring MDC offers the right recreational opportunities in the right places by building tools to categorize each of MDC's conservation areas based on the recreational opportunity available and the amount of people who visit each area and live nearby. The planning effort is expected to wrap up by June, and staff are already using the tools to help prioritize public use-related work, for example, determining appropriate levels of area maintenance on conservation areas. In January, Ozark and Southeast Region Protection staff hosted 2 on-the-job learning experiences for early career conservation agents, focused on hunting, fishing, and trapping activities that they regulate. Pictured holding tubs of suckers, conservation area agents Sarah Abbott, Caitlin Davis, Jacob Seavey, and Zach Durbin participated, learning gigging techniques and enforcement strategies from experienced agents after gigging for the first time, and practice proper cleaning, scoring, and preparing their catch. These hands-on learning experiences help conservation agents build credibility with resource users and develop trust within their communities. And in closing, everybody's favorite MDC history notes. In 1937, the winter waterfowl census showed 30,000 ducks and 7,000 geese statewide. I think Reed will tell us we got a few more than that today, right? Daily possession, drainage, drought, and poor hunting regulations continue to take their toll. Daily and possession limits of 10 ducks and 5 geese, prohibitions against live decoys and baiting were considered strict by some. It is amazing to see the progress agencies and partners have made to restore wetland and waterfowl conservation across North America. And in fact, we're going to celebrate 40 years of the North American Waterfowl Management Plan this year, which is a huge, huge accomplishment. And a shout out to Commissioner Cruzy, who took the opportunity to conduct a waterfowl survey with staff, and I'm guessing you saw more than 30,000 ducks and 7,000 geese. Is that? That's important. That's very important. In 1948, the cannon net was used for the first time at Swan Lake Refuge to capture geese for banding. I thank Commissioner Wagner for the opportunity he had last fall to cannon net some wood ducks with staff at BK Leach in Lincoln County. Again, huge shout out for staff for doing great work. And in January of 2011, MDC staff captured the first elk in Hazard County, Kentucky. In May of 2011, the department transported 34 elk. There was 34 elk when we left. There were 35 elk in the trailer when we got here. We had an addition that occurred on the way. They were delivered to a holding pen at Peck Ranch. That holding pen is gone, but the great memories still last, and you'll hear more from Aaron Hildreth about the success of our elk restoration efforts. So, Madam Chair, that concludes my update.
Thank you, Director Sumner. Commission, any question for our directors? Yes, Ray.
Madam Chair, not a question, but just a quick comment, Director. First of all, congratulations to your niece for her success in the MONAS tournament. It's great that Uncle Jason could help her learn to shoot an arrow and archery skills.
My sister would claim that she had all of that, but we won't argue that. You know.
Well, I'll let you all fight about that over our Easter supper. But speaking of MONASP, I was there with Commissioner Cruzy, and it was really an amazing operation. I think the team from MDC deserves a special shout out for that. And also, as much so, really more so, the Missouri Conservation Heritage Foundation and the team that put together these thousands of people that were there, and just it was so heartwarming to see these kids walking around with their bows, and to see the vendors and the proud parents and the kids come off of the line after they fired their arrows and give a thumbs up to their parents in the crowd. And anyhow, so that's very exciting. So kudos to Tricia and her gang as well.
Yeah, it's an amazing event. It is truly a team effort. It's a labor of love for many. I mean, I talked to the staff that have continually been going. They just absolutely love it. They understand the impact it has on the lives of those children, and it connects their families with them. Yeah, we couldn't do it without significant partnership, and I'll say the team doesn't rest on their laurels because they just keep figuring out ways to make it better. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Commission, any other questions?
I'll have one more comment, because I always have another comment. But I want to just tell you all how grateful we are for the volunteerism that permeates the culture of this organization. Commissioner Wagner mentioned MONASP. We know what you give up when you go spend 3, 4, 5 nights away from family and loved ones. That work just is unceasing. It's always encouraging and uplifting for us to see the self-sacrificing commitment that this organization has to that next generation and that generation after that. Those of you who are managing internships also, that's an extra special level of work. No one would ever put me in charge of an internship, at least if they wanted to hire somebody after that. I'm incredibly grateful to you all for your shepherding of all of these young people into the organization, introducing them into the proper ideals that underpin conservation, and that will never go unappreciated from folks on this commission. So thanks to everybody who gives that extra time.
Yeah, we have a lot of servant leaders in this organization, and the work of conservation for many of them isn't what they do, it's who they are. So
Yeah.
it means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ed?
Yeah, before I was appointed to this position by the governor, I still am a life member of the Conservation Federation of Missouri, and went to their annual meeting a couple weeks ago, as did the a couple other commissioners and the director and a ton of staff, and basically everybody I see in this room here today. And it highlighted the fact that, and this is kind of, it's unusual, I think, but the amount of support that the Conservation Department gets from not-for-profits, some for-profit entities, I suppose. But there are people from all walks of life and all different kind of sub-interests in the conservation agenda. You would have no idea what party anybody was in. There was no political discussions. Everybody had a common interest in conservation. And it was really just it was a great event. I mean, I was glad I went, but just to see how everybody works together. I think that's not what you normally get with the government. You know, I mean, people that are involved in organizations that deal with the government generally are there to try to keep the government from messing with them, you know. That's not what this is all about. And just really proud to be a part of this organization. Final thing I'll just say is, and I thought about this yesterday, you know, we're blessed with a sales tax in Missouri, an 8-cent sales tax, which is gives us the opportunity to have the best conservation department in the country. For all kinds of resources are associated with that. But the reason that this department is so great is because of the people that work here. You know, people don't settle to work for the Conservation Department. They want to work for the Conservation Department. And you can see it in all aspects of what this organization does, top to bottom. And like I said, I'm just proud and honored to be associated with you all.
Excellent.
Here, here.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Director Sumners. Commission, at this time, I would call your attention to the consent calendar. Please review the items that are listed there, and then I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we're going to buckle in, fasten our seatbelts. Deputy Director Laura Conley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and Director Sumners. Good morning today. You'll recall that in December, the Commission voted to approve recommendations for proposed changes related to deer season and allow for county-specific chronic wasting disease regulatory approaches. These included removing the CWD management zone and updating how counties are designated for specific restrictions on placement of feed and minerals, eliminating the CWD portion of firearms deer season, rescinding the antler point restriction, and increasing the acreage requirement to obtain CWD management permits from 5 to 20 acres, among other considerations. Following the Commission's initial consideration, the proposed rulemakings were filed with the Secretary of State's office for publication in the Missouri Register, which initiated a 30-day public comment period. Just over 100 stakeholder comments were received across the 9 proposals. A summary of these comments is included in the final orders of rulemaking provided in your packet. If approved, the effective date of these rulemakings will be June 30th, 2026. Madam Chair, unless the Commission has any questions or concerns, I request approval for these final orders of rulemaking with no changes to the original recommendations.
Do I have a motion to approve staff recommendation?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. The Regulations Committee met on February 26th and March 4th to review recommendations to establish season dates, harvest quotas, and permit quotas for the 2026 black bear hunting season, recommendations to establish season dates and permit quotas for the 2026 elk hunting season, and recommendations to establish seasons and limits for migratory game birds and waterfowl for the 2026-2027 season. These recommendations are being brought forward for Commission consideration today. Commissioners, all recommendations brought forward today establish season dates and limits which are not subject to a public comment period, and if approved, will be filed with the Secretary of State as final orders of rulemaking. Included in your packet are orders of rulemaking to establish seasons dates along with permit and harvest quotas for the 2026 black bear hunting season with an anticipated effective date of April 15th, 2026. Nate Bowersock, our bear biologist, was unable to join us today, so we have Dr. Charles Anderson, who would be presenting these recommendations. Charles, the podium is yours.
Thank you, Laura. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
So just to review the 2025 black bear hunting season and also get into our 2026 regulation recommendations. So for 2025, there was a permit increase from 400 to 600 permits, and we did increase the season length from 10 to 14 days to include 2 weekends or multiple weekends with that. And the regulation changes were set up to increase hunting opportunity and harvest rates. In our 2025 season, there was roughly over 5,000 applications for 600 permits. We had 9 bears harvested, 2 were female, 7 were male. 56% of the bears were taken on public land. All harvests were with firearms, and 2 of those harvested bears were previously marked. Ozark and Wayne counties had their first harvest since the inaugural season of 2021. And then all that brings us our total of counties to 17 with a bear harvest since 2021. Looking at postseason hunter surveys, a little over 50% of the hunters responded to the survey. We saw a spike in hunter participation during the weekend despite some poor weather conditions. Approximately 20% of hunters did not participate in the hunting season, and the usual responses for that is a lack of time or distance to the hunting zone were cited the most. A majority of hunters traveled more than 100 miles to hunt. Hunters spent a little bit more time scouting this season, with 69% of successful hunters spending about 6 days or more scouting. When looking at the surveys in general, there was good satisfaction with the hunting season, and this is also personified by the sheer number of survey respondents who said yes, they would apply for a permit again. For our 2026 Missouri population status, our current model is a population reconstruction model depicted on the right there. It uses results from our 2012 hair snare study. We estimate there's roughly about 1,100 bears in 2026 with a 9% growth rate. We are in the middle of developing a new population model, and the results for our hair snare study from 2023 should be available by summer or early fall. That was put behind. We would like to have that sooner, but it's a CITES species, and our genetics lab is in Canada, so we had a CITES permit issue, so it took a little time to get those across the border. So just as a reminder that our hair snare work is the locations across southern Ozarks to collect our hairs for genetic population reconstruction. So with this new population model, it gives us a new abundance estimate, but more importantly, it gives us a density distribution, which is key for future zone-specific management recommendations. So when we're talking about recommendations for 2026, we want to balance opportunity with our bear management plan, where our goal of hunting season is to provide hunting opportunity while allowing for population growth. Previously established 40 bear harvest quota limit was based on our 2021 population estimate. So regulations allow for zones to be closed early. And then from 2021 to 2025, between 8 to 15 bears have been harvested per season, well below the quota limit. So population has continued to grow, and there's room to reevaluate quota limits and permit allocation. Looking at our population growth rate for a no harvest scenario, that's roughly a little over 9%. And then again, with that 40 bear quota, we're looking at an estimated growth rate of roughly almost 6%. So if we looked at the bear quota and adjustments in that, as we move to 50 or 60 bears, you see a minimal change in that growth rate estimation. For instance, between 50 and 60 bears, it's only 4.9 to 4.0 for estimated population growth rate. So again, there's marginal change in that growth rate with an increased quota. So we recommend increasing quota to 60 bears, which would increase harvest opportunity. Our original 400 bear permit application was based on an estimate of 10% success rate when first initiating the 2021 bear season. Success rates have ranged between 2.5 and, I should say, the actual success rates have ranged from 2.5 to 5%. Not all permits have not been purchased at 18% on average, and not all permit holders hunted at 15%. So even with small increases in permits in 2025, participation and success rates did not change. So we recommend increasing permits for 2026. So for looking at permit quota, we want to consider different permit allocation scenarios, number of permits sold, harvest success rates, expected bear harvest. And we want to balance increases in permits with hunting opportunity and success rates where we want to avoid season ending too early. An increase in permits would provide additional hunting opportunity, and draw odds would increase, which might help with recruitment. We will be able to better evaluate how harvest rates changes with more hunters, which is helpful for future regulation recommendations. So we're recommending increasing permits to 2,000. So our 2026 recommendation would, again, to maintain the application period in May, maintain the 14-day season, increase our quota limit from 40 to 60 bears, and increase our permits from 600 to 2,000 permits. So looking at the future and what population benchmarks we could use for future bear management, currently our bear densities and conflict calls are low. So without altering current growth rates, population would likely reach 2,000 bears in 6 years. So carrying capacity in our core range is around 2,700 bears, with statewide carrying capacity about 5,500 bears. With time, we will want to find an abundance range that balances bear and human needs. So we want to maintain bear abundance and density levels that can be managed while keeping human-bear conflict at a lower rate. So bear management needs to include both bear and human management. We look to use hunting to slow or limit the growth of the population, and we use outreach and education for human tolerance and expectations. So we developed a framework to help guide future regulation changes and utilize population benchmarks along with a new population estimate that was coming from the Hare Snare study. So it's a phased approach, and the time frame for phase 1 is 2026 to increase the permits to 2,000, but maintain that zone allotment percentage and increase harvest quota to 60 bears. Phase 2 for 2027 would be to utilize population benchmarks, new density estimates, and results from the 2026 hunting season to inform season quotas and permits. And then phase 3, longer down the road, would be to evaluate effectiveness of those population benchmarks and utilize population density estimates and results from the 2026 and 27 seasons to consider future changes. So what are those potential population benchmarks? And we're further developing those benchmarks to have measurable objectives to inform management. So a benchmark focuses on population growth rate. We consider conflict calls and tolerance levels within the benchmarks. Tolerance levels, which we would do a survey every 5 years, and then we are beginning that survey here, or I should say another round of that study is being conducted here currently in the spring of 2026. And hunting is, just as a reminder, hunting is not used to resolve conflict, but to manage a population. Conflict is resolved at the individual level. And tolerance levels lets us understand social carrying capacity. So a summary of regulation recommendations of 2026 black bear season. Again, May application period, increase the quota, maintain the 14-day season, increase quota limit for 40 to 60 bears, and increase permits from 600 to 2,000. With that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Charles. I think I have one to get us started, and then Commissioner Clausen has one. Regarding our folks who do draw a permit and do buy a permit, do we have a wait out or sit out period for them afterward?
No.
So folks can continue to enter the,
And to be frank with that, we had our multiple people draw a couple of years in a row, and we have had one person draw multiple times and harvest multiple bears over a couple of years.
excellent, thank you. Commissioner Clausen?
Just for my understanding of exactly what you're referring to here in your possible, probably the slide right before this, you refer to tolerance levels and conflict calls. I think I know what you're referring to, but could you just tell us what you mean by those two terms?
Yeah, it's, with tolerance levels, a lot of times, social carrying capacity is below actual biological carrying capacity, and tolerance level is
We're getting
that.
into big words here again now. Tell me what that means, like
It's
how
what
many
the-
bears we can handle in some particular, sorry about this, gosh,
Yeah, it's how many bears that humans will tolerate or have allowed in the area. A lot of times because we end up getting damage from garbage, livestock, any of those type of things. It's how many bears that humans will be tolerant of with that.
okay? And conflict calls are just,
Are those where we get conflict calls is, again, people having bears in their garbage, hitting their chicken coops, honey boxes.
okay, so you reach it, once they reach their tolerance level, that's when you get conflict calls.
Yes.
All right, got it.
Excellent. Commission, any other questions for Charles?
Madam Chair, I have two quick questions, I think. As a follow-up to yours, so hunters are allowed to hunt multiple times from year to year, if you will. But for those who are drawn and do not purchase a permit, and then that allocation goes unpermitted, and someone else is not allowed to come purchase a permit, is there a sit-out period for those individuals who
No.
no-show?
No, there's not.
Might be worth taking a look at some point. But secondly, through all of the technical answers and the questions that Commissioner Clausen raised, I think what the public sometimes simply wants to know is to hear about this, and they hear the occasional example of a bear that shows up into Kirkwood or somewhere in St. Louis County or Jackson County. You know, how far away from the notion that there are a lot of bear in the suburban areas and maybe rooting through the trash cans in places like St. Louis, Kansas City, Springfield, I suppose, Cape Girardeau. And it's a matter of management and conflict and so on, but just where the rubber meets the road, is that on the horizon where people got to worry about that?
Well, with those, what you end up having is, it's the same bear that is the problematic bear that you'll get calls on from multiple people. But with an increasing bear population, yes, you will have that interface of bears starting to roam into areas where they might not be wanted. But also, that's why it's important for our outreach and education to make people bear wise, and to understand that interface happens, and not all bears are conflict in the sense of problem bears. They might be just roaming through. They do have a dispersal and stuff, but also to how do we work with them to understand how to bear-proof our garbage cans, put up electric fences around beehives, those type of things is also part of that educational process. But yes, as bear numbers rise, there is a chance for increased bear conflict calls.
I noticed a while back that the department put out a press release about coyotes during mating season, and beware of them running around, you know, your farm, your suburban home. And I don't recall that from years gone by, but, you know, hopefully we won't be putting out press releases, beware of, you know, bear packs running through the community. So anyhow, thank you.
Thank you.
All exciting.
Excellent. Charles, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, I request commission approval of 3 CSR 10-7.900, black bear hunting seasons, general provisions, and 3 CSR 10-7.905, black bear hunting season, application and draw process as presented.
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Any discussion? I think perhaps Deputy Director Conley, especially with your background in black bear management in the state of Missouri, now that we've had 5 years, it seems like we have learned some things in those 5 years. How would you characterize our black bear management going forward?
Absolutely. And so I think what Charles presented in terms of kind of next steps and thinking about population benchmarks and the ability of our new information to help us look at how we could approach zone-specific management, we are really moving into that phase of the opportunity to actively manage our black bear population. And so really identifying what an appropriate population level is based on the habitat as well as social tolerances, and then using the regulatory structure that exists to help keep that population within those bounds. So I think this is really kind of that step forward to really thinking about actively managing our bear population. Of course, still providing plenty of hunting opportunity, but taking a more fine-tuned approach to our management.
Excellent, thank you. I'll call a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any discussion, same sign? No, sorry. Any opposition, same sign? Hearing none, motion carries.
Thank you. Commissioners, your packet also contains recommendations for final orders of rulemaking for 3 CSR 10-7.705, elk hunting seasons, and 3 CSR 10-7.710, elk application and draw process, with an anticipated effective date of April 15th, 2026. Here today to provide additional background and details of these recommendations is Aaron Hildreth. Aaron has worked for the department for almost 10 years in the position of cervid biologist. He received his BS in Fisheries and Wildlife from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and his master's from the University of Kentucky, where he studied the physiological effects of the reintroduction process for the elk that were translocated to Missouri and Virginia in 2012 and 2013. Aaron has also spent time researching various ungulate damage mitigation techniques and ungulate diseases. Aaron, the podium is yours.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Director. Pleased today to be here to talk to you about elk. So we'll cover the season summaries for the first 6 years of elk hunting in Missouri, cover a brief population status update, and then we'll move into our recommendations for the 2026 season. So first 6 seasons, we've had 5 antlered elk permits for all 6 of those seasons so far. During the first 2, we harvested, their permittees went 5 for 5. In the most recent 4 years, in each of those years, 3 of 5 permits were filled. We get questions a lot on, well, do we think this is a result of a change in a negative way for the population? And I don't think that's the case. The reality is hunters have different motivations and put in different levels of effort. They also have, again, different desires as far as the animals that they're wishing to pursue. And as we saw with bear, for example, there was a direct correlation between more scouting resulting in a greater likelihood of harvest. Some of those same things go on here for elk. And so again, I don't see the quote decrease from the first 2 years as far as the number of permits being filled as a negative thing.
Are these all being taken down at Peck Ranch, or are these at other locations?
So far, I would say probably 3/4 of the elk are harvested on public lands. The majority of those public lands are actually with Ozark National Scenic Riverways with the Park Service. And so a pretty healthy chunk get harvested there. There are some on private land, and there have been multiple that are harvested on Peck Ranch and the outside of the refuge portion. And in particular, the bull there in the middle was actually one of the 2011 original release bulls that was harvested in the second year by that gentleman. So we look at our population. So we have 2 different models. We have an accounting model. This model is based on the vitals, so the survival rates, the reproductive rates from a research project that wrapped up in 2019. And as we look at this graph, you can see that some years the line going up is steeper, and in some years it's fairly flat. And we do have quite a bit of varying degrees of up. Sometimes it's fairly stable, and other times it does go up quite rapidly. But generally speaking, we have a stable to slightly or slowly increasing trend in our population. We compare that to our siteability model, and so this model is developed, and this is the data that's collected from this, comes from our aerial survey. It's conducted during leaf-off conditions every winter. So when we look here, for the last 6 years, by and large, fairly stable. You see quite a big uptick in '24, went down in '25, and then back up in '26. Obviously, the population is not fluctuating by the numbers that are shown there. It's just an artifact of what we're able to spot from the helicopter in that correction. So again, if we were to fit a line to that, it would be stable to slightly increasing as well. We look at our cow-calf ratios, and so we collect this data at 2 different times, so from ground-based counts in the fall during the peak of breeding season, as well as from the air when we do our aerial survey. You can see that there are some pretty significant differences across years, and in particular, and I pointed this out last year, when we did our surveys for the 2024 production year, those were the lowest values that we had detected, in this case for both surveys. Not great. It was very noticeably low production that year. We look at this year, they went up slightly. They're still below the 5-year averages. We can look at and compare that to other states, and by and large, again, if we look at our long-term average, we're roughly in line with what we see with other eastern elk populations. But I think we have a lot more ups and downs than we see in a lot of the other states. We look at that as a population growth, again, by year for the last decade. And again, there are very high numbers and very stable to low numbers. It's really weird to go from 27% to 2%, for example. And it was very evident from a calf number on the ground standpoint. Those numbers seem to be pretty spot on. We don't have great explanations for why it seems to move that much, but it does. At the end of the day, though, we still have a stable to slowly growing population. We do not have a decreasing population. We continue to see more numbers, and a good other reflection that our indications here are probably tracking fairly well. When we look at, say, yearling males, which are fairly easy to identify the following year, they tend to track really heavily with what calf numbers looked like the following year, or the previous year, excuse me. So we look at our bull to cow ratio. So the number of bulls overall is absolutely increasing. The ratio, you'll notice looking back here for the last decade, we went from a really high ratio of 1 bull for every 2 cows to something that is probably closer to roughly 1 to 4. There's a couple things that played into that. One, cow survival is really, really high, and we had a very young population at the beginning of that graph. Bulls don't live as long as cows. Our bulls seem to live to 7 to 9 years of age. Our cows, we still have original release cows that are 15 to 20 years old at this point that are still doing just fine and dropping calves. So there's a great disparity in their survival, and that plays into this ratio. I think it has absolutely hit where as low as it's going to go, and I think we're probably going to see that it hovers in the mid-20s to mid-30s through time. One thing that we do notice, though, is our number of prime age bulls, and I'm defining those as 7 to 9 years of age. So that's typically the peak of their physical nature, peak production. They don't seem to be as high of a percentage in the population as I would expect. And so that could be one of the reasons that we have a bit of a asynchronous or really elongated breeding and then therefore calving season. So I would like to see more of the prime age bulls as far as a number or percentage to help with that. We look at the genetics. So when we did our research project, every elk that we get an opportunity to handle, we're pulling genetics from. This includes hunter-harvested elk as well, so that we can continue to look at this in the future. But with the previous work, we showed that if we maintained similar demographic values, so birth rate, reproductive values, the age that bulls live, those type things, we would retain roughly 90% of our genetic diversity in our elk population for the next 130 years. That's a really good retention for starting with such a small population. Since that study, though, I do believe that our growth rates are certainly lower than they were initially, and definitely more fluctuation, more variability between years, Part of that, I think, is also that we see shorter lifespans for bulls than I might expect to see in some other places. Again, I think ours are living into that 7 to 9 year range. There's obvious exceptions, but I would expect more of our bulls to make it into the 10, 11, 12-year age range, and I just don't see that happening right now. This plays into our recommendations as we start thinking about, again, trying to maximize population growth right now to get that population as close to our target goal of 500 as quick as possible. Delaying cow harvest helps with that. If we end up with lower rates, the likelihood that we could reduce genetic diversity increases. That could end up manifesting in negative consequences for the population long-term. Again, there's no guarantees that that happens. We may not have whatever the Achilles heel for our elk is that appears, but by decreasing genetic diversity, we reduce the resilience of that population to whatever those different factors may be. So with that, our permit quota recommendations are for 5 antlered elk permits again this year, with again at least 10%, or in this case, at least 1 permit would go to a qualifying resident landowner. We are not recommending an antlerless permit quota at this time. The application period, our recommendation is the month of May to fall in line with what we have for bear as well. And the results will be available no later than July 1st to the public. From a season date recommendation, and just as a reminder, the same permit is valid for both portions. So you had an archery opportunity and a firearm opportunity, provided you didn't fill your permit during the archery portion. The 9-day archery portion would start on the 3rd Saturday in October, so October 17th to the 25th. And then the 9-day firearm portion would start on the 2nd Saturday in December and run from December 12th to the 20th. As we look to the future, we do plan to continue pursuing alternative monitoring methods. We've got a camera project that we're trying to figure out what the next steps are there. We're also working to find better mechanisms to combine our different data streams into a more integrated model that we don't have to have 2 models that in some cases are moving us in different directions or saying different things. Let's take all the different data streams that we have and try to fuse them together to chart one path instead of potentially divergent paths. One thing that we're also working on right now is finalizing an elk habitat management plan by the end of this fiscal year. To date, we've had very few negative public interactions as it relates to elk. Few vehicle collisions, few complaints of pasture or hay damage. But as this population continues to grow, we're going to have more of those. We've had a couple of those reports here in the last month or so. And we have tools at our disposal to help mitigate some of that. We also have opportunities as we have different staff structures and different partners to work with, including the Park Service, to tailor our habitat management to be as effective and efficient with our resources as possible. And in this case, also doing really good things for elk. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Aaron. I have a few questions just to get us kicked off.
Yes.
So when you look at the eastern elk populations, just boil it down for us. What makes some of our challenges in Missouri regarding our population growth unique?
So I think compared to a lot of other places, we have a very, very, very small percentage of open land. And let me be very clear, I don't think that we should take down very good Ozark forest and make them open lands. That's not what I would advocate for at all. But elk are absolutely tied to their bellies. They need a large volume of forage, and if you give them the opportunity to graze as opposed to browse, they'll absolutely take advantage of that. And so grasses and forbs are where they would prefer to spend their time. The better we can do on that front, 1, the less likely elk are to get in trouble, and 2, and it is a testament to date so far, they can move a long distance, and they don't because they're happy. But as that population grows, our ability to maintain that habitat and really good quality from an open land standpoint will be a key to keeping them out of trouble and in place.
I should have started off to say the commission had an opportunity when we were down in Van Buren this fall to tour Peck Ranch and see one of the larger elk herds, and it was pretty amazing to see them on the Missouri landscape. To follow up, maybe I'm asking for a hypothesis here, maybe I'm asking for a list of questions, or a list of things, but what's contributing to that bull mortality rate?
So the best guess that I have right now is, my gut would tell me it's something to do with our really, really long breeding season. The fact that I can hear bulls bugle from mid-September, and the latest I've heard them bugle is early February. When we look at 3 or 4 of the last 5 or so years, we've done cow-calf counts the end of September, first couple weeks of October. We're running into 1 or 2 calves that are hours to a couple weeks old at that point in time. Well, there's an 8-month gestation period. That means those cows are getting bred in some cases in January and February. Well, the bulls are probably staying amped up and focused on reproduction instead of getting their body back into better shape. And so I think there's some of that going on. There are still a lot of bulls that are really smart. They come in during the peak, spend 7 days to 2 weeks, and run back to the middle of nowhere to be happy and alone. And there are others that probably expend a very significant amount of resources hanging around longer than they really should be. And I think that just weakens them.
Okay, my third and maybe last question is regarding our permit application numbers. So over time, what have we seen in regards to how many folks are applying for the permit?
Yeah, so year 1 was certainly the high, and we always expect that for a new opportunity. And that was 19,000-ish. If we look at all of the 5 years since then, we're hovering anywhere between usually 8,500 and 9,500 by year, and that's been very, very stable. The percentage, or the number of qualifying landowner applications ticks up ever so slightly every year, but it's still a fairly low number, usually below 200 each year.
Excellent, thank you. Commission, any other questions for Aaron?
If you wouldn't mind, speculate on the possible implications, if any, with the fact that in some of these areas we have a population of feral horses.
So from my observations, elk and horses don't exactly coexist very well. Don't get me wrong, if you go to Owl's Bend, for example, with the Park Service, you will see elk and horses in the same field. It's a very large field, and they're occupying entirely separate ends of that field. We've seen so just north of Peck Ranch headquarters, there's a string of fields there that the horses do like to use. When the horses are there, the elk are not. And they do tend to graze it down to the nubbins. When the horses leave, the elk are more likely to go back in there and take advantage of what's still there. But they don't coexist overly well. I will say from our aerial survey, horse numbers seem to be, for the horse groups that we're able to spot, seem to be within or below the objective number before Park Service and Wild Horse League are required by law to take action in managing or mitigating that population.
Great.
Yes, Ed?
So are the only elk, or whatever elk we have in Missouri, did they start at Peck Ranch with the introduction that we did, whenever that was?
That is correct. So between 2011 and 2013, we reintroduced 107 or 108, if you include the calf born in transit. That is the only wild population that has been reintroduced. We do have, depending on the year, 15 to 30 wandering elk reports annually. Some of those are escaped captives. The majority are wandering elk, in many cases from other states. So we get elk that probably wander here from Kansas, Nebraska. We've had one that we can confirm from Wisconsin. We get really weird wanderers, but the elk, when we look at all the GPS data for our reintroduced herd, they are defying what elk normally do, and they are homebodies and do not move. When we see the outside of there, they're one of those 2 other categories.
Are all these animals tagged or somehow individually able to be tracked or not?
So at this point in time, we do not have active collars on individuals. We've seen in some of the cases for some of the other wanderers, we've had photos from other states as they've tracked through or moved through those states and can confirm by antlers the same thing. In most cases, they're popping up in the fall, and they're usually young males that are wandering from a breeding season standpoint. But we still have a large number of the elk that are on the landscape are pit tagged from previous capture events, and we can still identify some of the cows from the reintroduction because they have a metal TB tag in their ear. And so when we're doing our surveys in the fall from the ground, you can very clearly see the metal TB tag and go, I know you came here between 2011 and 2013.
I know it probably doesn't matter to the elk particularly, but how big is Peck Ranch?
So Peck Ranch, the original square is just under 24,000 acres, and then the Don Bedell tract that was added adds about another 7,000-ish acres, so 34,000. You have Current River Conservation Area, which is roughly the same size, and then Rocky Creek and Angeline that are very large as well, plus Park Service property that is going up and down the Current River. Overall, the roughly 365 square mile restoration zone boundary, the formal boundary, about 80% of it is public land or land that's accessible to the public for hunting. A large chunk of that is also Pioneer Forest or Ladd Foundation property. So,
If there's any poaching of these animals going on, do you feel like you can track that or?
So locals are very supportive of the elk by and large. We had a recent poaching event around Thanksgiving where a bull was poached on the driving tour of Peck Ranch, and formal charges were just filed against that individual here within the past couple of weeks through some really hard work of our protection staff. In particular, Brad Hadley I would not wish to cross him. He has created his job and will dig to find every answer. We've had roughly 10 poaching cases that we're aware of. There should certainly be some that we're not aware of, but the number of cases is very few, and the public support we get locally is very high for bringing those folks to justice.
Is there satisfaction with whatever remedies or punishments the courts have meted out down there for people that are caught poaching?
So there was a case that was prosecuted and sentence was handed down in September of last year. There were 3 individuals involved. They took a plea deal. 2 of them pled to cases related to deer. One of them pled to the actual taking of one of the elk there. That individual was given, I believe it was a 60-day suspended jail sentence for 1 year of probation, supervised probation, 1 year of unsupervised, and then handed a $10,000 fine. And so that is a big kudos for the legislature in passing enhanced penalties for bear and elk, and I believe a couple other species, really ramping those penalties up to make folks think twice, because there is a significant repercussion for those negative actions.
I assume they lost their ability to hunt legally in Missouri too, or?
So the judge did not opt to add that to it. I'll defer to our protection staff on what has come down from that.
Thank you.
Excellent, great questions. All right, anything, Ray?
Madam Chair, just to add, you took the words out of my mouth about the poaching incident. I was going to give the protection team a shout out for that. You did it better than I can do, but.
They work very hard and are very, very good at their jobs.
Kudos. And Ed, if I were answering the question about was there satisfaction with the penalties and the judgments against poachers, personally, I would say no. I would say that they ought to be stricter than they are with a lifetime ban on hunting. And so I think it's a very serious matter. But thank you for the question, and thank you for your diplomatic, respectful answer of the judicial outcome. Very quick last question. I asked it about bears a while back, a little earlier. You discussed wanderers from other states and the home-bodied nature of our herd. But will there be a time when elk are, do you envision a time in the foreseeable future when elk are spreading throughout Missouri and people begin to think that we have an elk situation like we do whitetail deer or anything like that?
So I think elk and deer are very, very different for a boatload of different reasons. We chose very intentionally to reintroduce elk in the Ozarks where we chose that. They can cause a ton of damage, and there are 0 corn or soybean plants grown in those 3 counties outside of a garden. That's to try and mitigate damage, or minimize the opportunity for them to get in trouble. Our stated goal from the beginning has been a population goal of 500 managed through hunting. I can't foresee a time where we will have more elk than people who wish to pursue them. And so I think that we will absolutely be able to control the population through regulated hunting. Right now, we're still, in my opinion, in an opportunity where this is providing a recreational opportunity. When we get further down the road, to stay within that 500 individuals and within that portion of the 3 counties, that's where permit number or recommendations would go up to keep that population where it is and within the number confines that we've stated are our goals to the public.
Good question. Thank you, Aaron, so much.
Let me ask one more thing that's real quick. When we were down there, I noticed there was like housing down there on the ranch.
Yes.
Do you have volunteers that stay there, or what do you use that housing for?
So the complex that's there near one of the road intersections, it's MOFEP. So it's the long-term 100-year forest ecological project. So that project goes through pulses where they have large work crews that go down, and so that's housing that's used for those crews when they go down there.
Thank you.
Good question. Excellent. Thank you, Aaron, so much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, at this time, I request commission approval of the 2026 elk hunting season dates and permit quotas as presented and described in your regulations packet.
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. Commissioners, as you know, the department's schedule for setting migratory bird and waterfowl hunting regulations is governed by a timeline and framework established by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Reed Viget is here today to provide an overview of the recommendations for the 2026-2027 migratory game bird and waterfowl hunting seasons, as well as a summary of the changes that were previously approved as part of the department's 5-year season structure and zone boundary review. Reed earned a bachelor's in forest wildlife management from Stephen F. Austin University in 2020 with a minor in spatial science. He also earned a master's in natural resources from the University of Missouri in 2023, focusing on the use of drones and artificial intelligence to quantify waterfowl on MDC intensively managed wetland areas. Prior to joining MDC as the Migratory Game Bird Coordinator in October of 2024, Reed participated in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's waterfowl breeding population and habitat surveys in Canada and worked as a banding crew lead for the Mississippi Flyway Banding Station. Reed, the podium is yours.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Hi, Reed.
Good morning.
Yeah, so today I'll be presenting on the 2026 and into 2027 migratory game bird season recommendations. There's a lot of different species and management plans, so we'll get started. So I'll kick it off with our webless migratory game bird recommendations. So these in Missouri are typically lower harvested species, less common species, less known species than the ducks and geese that we'll get to in a minute. So starting off with mourning doves, Missouri falls into the Central Management Unit in North America, and the latest population estimate was approximately 188.8 million mourning doves in Missouri, in the Central Management Unit. So that falls into the federal frameworks of a 90-day season and a 15 bird per day limit. And these were this harvest strategy was recently updated and voted on by the Flyway Councils this past meeting, but the frameworks really didn't change that much with some updated models. So with that being said, the earliest we can open migratory bird hunting seasons is September 1st, and so we run our 90 days consecutively from September 1st to November 29th, this is similar to in previous years with a daily bag limit of 15 doves in the aggregate to include morning Eurasian collared and white-winged doves, with a possession limit set federally 3 times the daily bag limit of 45 doves. And this comes with an extended falconry dove season that runs after the conclusion of dove season, so November 30th through December 16th. And shooting hours for doves are 1/2 hour before sunrise to sunset.
Falcons.
Very few.
We have an employee that does, right? Don't we?
We
Yeah, we
do,
do.
yes.
So other than him. Okay. There you go.
Very few. Moving on to American woodcock. So the woodcock harvest strategy is based on spring call counts. So they do roadside surveys, drive routes around. So the estimated abundance last year was 2.64 males per route, which puts us into a moderate framework of 45 days with a 3 bird per day daily bag limit. So with that, a few years ago now, we adjusted our season date slightly upon some public feedback regarding woodcock season. So we moved it back a few days. So it now opens October 18th and runs through December 1st. And again, the daily bag limit is 3 with a possession limit of 9. On to other webless migratory game birds. So coots, Virginia rail, sora, and then snipe. These don't have as formalized harvest strategies. However, Fish and Wildlife Service conducts harvest estimates every few years to kind of evaluate whether take is approaching any sort of concerning threshold or any of that. At this point, they are not. It's very low harvested species. And so for sora and Virginia rail seasons, September 1st through November 9th. So again, opening as early as we can to catch their early migration with a daily bag limit of 25 combined between the 2 species and a possession limit of 75. And then Wilson's or common snipe, September 1 through December 16th with a daily bag limit of 8 and a possession limit of 24. And then coots, so for coots, the season dates fall into the various zones and season date structures of the duck seasons with a daily bag limit of 15 and a possession limit of 45. And so that finishes our webless migratory game bird recommendations. So now we'll move on to waterfowl, beginning with ducks. And so for ducks, we have an early September teal season based on the breeding population of blue-winged teal. And so this past May, the estimate was 4.43 million teal. And so that puts us into a moderate framework, which allows us for a 9-day early teal season and 6 birds per day. Similar, the population slightly below what it was last year, but the same framework for teal season. And so typically, when it's a 16-day season, we recommend opening teal season the first Saturday after Labor Day. However, since it's shortened to 9 days, we essentially lose a week. And so the blue-winged teal in Missouri are most abundant throughout the state in mid to late September. However, their abundance is heavily driven based on some weather patterns and other things that can occur through September. So it is a little bit, with a shorter season, a little bit of a guessing game. However, excluding opening weekends, typically since birds are here and they haven't been shot at yet, more harvest has occurred between September 12th and 20th than September 5th through 13th, so kind of that later half of our regular teal season. So instead, we're recommending opening the second Saturday in September. And so that puts September teal season, the recommendation for September 12th to September 20th. And again, that's a six bird bag limit, and then specifically for September teal, the shooting hours are sunrise to sunset instead of a half hour before sunrise to minimize incidental take of other species that aren't allowed during teal season. And so for regular duck season, the federal framework uses adaptive harvest management based on the mid-continent mallard for the Mississippi flyway. And so depending on a few different factors. We can either have a 60, 45, or 30-day season or a closed season with different bag and mallard specific limits, depending on where it falls. And we're allowed to open no earlier than the Saturday nearest September 24th, and we can close no later than January 31st. So last year's breeding habitat status, as you can see, across kind of the western prairies, things didn't look so good. We had some dry years. North Dakota had a nice kind of band of moisture and good habitat through the center of it. But really in the east, we saw like Ontario, and kind of some of the Great Lakes states, they really had some good breeding habitat, this past year. Looking at fall habitat conditions using the U.S. Drought Monitor, Missouri overall continued to remain in a state of drought across a large portion of it. And so we had some weather patterns come through that put various water out on the landscape for the birds. But for the most part, reports kind of indicated that most of the season it was limited to places where they had the capacity to add water artificially with pumping and things like that to the landscape. So the May pond count, which are these temporal ponds that show up in the prairie pothole regions from snowmelt and spring precipitation, they drive a lot of the breeding of birds and the distribution of birds on the breeding grounds. So we use the May pond counts and then the mallard breeding population to set our Mississippi flyway duck seasons. So from 2024 to 2025, the May pond count went down by about 1 million ponds across the area. It wasn't down everywhere. The prairies were down in Canada quite a bit, kind of compared to some of the other areas, but it came out to 4.1 million May ponds. However, the total duck breeding population estimate from the breeding survey was effectively the same as 2024, with an estimate right around 34 million total breeding ducks in the state. And so again, using that May ponds and mallard, mid-continent mallard population, this is the matrix kind of that the AHM models spit out as far as using those two to set either the 60-day season in the blue, moving up to the closed season in red. And so to start with, where we're at for 2026, we had 4.2 million May ponds and 6.6 million mallards, so that's where we fell into that 60-day season framework. And just to kind of go back in history a little bit, the matrix does change every year based on how much harvest we had estimated previous years and what frameworks we used previously. However, I'm going to just kind of overlay some prior years' breeding populations and May pond counts onto this so we can kind of get an idea about how things have moved over the years. So starting back in 2016, so I went back and looked at the past 10 years. This one, if you'll notice, the bottom is actually greater than or equal to 9.25 million mallards. We were actually at about 11 million mallards in 2016. Again, the May pond count, not too 5 million May ponds, but a lot more mallards. So from 2016 to 2017, it was a wetter year, similar breeding populations, a little bit lower, still above that 9.25, but more May ponds. 2018 kind of went back to kind of this average 5 million May pond count. 2019, same thing. Then we had a 2-year break. We couldn't get crews into Canada to fly the surveys with COVID. And so then coming back in 2022, we start to see some of the trends of population decreases. So now we're at 7.5 million mallards. 2023, down to 6 million mallards. 2024, it came back up to 6.5 million mallards, and that's similar to 2025. And then again, 2026, we're at that 6.6 million mallards. So that's kind of, I guess, the story of mallards specifically over the past 10 years. So with this, we get that 60-day framework and 6 birds per day. So every about 5 years, Fish and Wildlife Service allows states to go through and reevaluate their zone boundaries and their season dates. And we go through in Missouri and we do quite a few in-person meetings. So last January and February, I got my tour of the state as a new employee with MDC. I got to meet a lot of staff. It was a really good experience. But we held 13 in-person workshops. We had about 500 people attend those 13 workshops. Not all of them were equal. Some of them we had a few people, some of them we had, I think the largest was just about 100 people at one of them in St. Charles. But we did that to collect input for duck season dates and zone boundaries across the state. And then we also sent out online and a mail survey to collect feedback from those folks as well that either weren't able to make it in person or wanted to provide feedback but didn't feel like they needed to show up in person. And so there you can see just kind of the distribution of responses by counties. It's not really surprising based on where the wetland habitat really is in the state and where the ducks tend to settle. The responses show the same thing that the birds do. So as an output of that, we came to the commission last May with a recommendation to set those. And so this is a map with the updated zone boundaries. We made a change in central Missouri, where we shifted the north middle zone boundary east just a little bit from, I think it was Highway 65 over to Highway 63. And then in the St. Charles area, we shifted that zone boundary back up. And actually, this is the same zone boundaries that we had in Missouri from 2017 to 2020. And so with that, the formula is the north zone opened the last Saturday in October with no split. The middle zone formula came out to open the Saturday nearest November 6th. Then we closed the Monday nearest December 15th for 5 days, then open the remainder of the days. And then the south zone open Thanksgiving Day for 4 days, closed through December 6th, and then open December 7th to January 31st. And so that's the only one, I guess, out of the two in the zone boundary that did not change during that review. And so what those dates actually look like for 2026, for ducks for the north zone, October 30th through December 29th. For the middle zone, November 7th to December 13th, and then December 19th to January 10th. And then in the south zone, November 26th to November 29th for that Thanksgiving weekend period, and then December 7th to January 31st, again, as late as the federal frameworks allow. We did get some input regarding youth season. At this time, we didn't recommend any changes to youth season. Still collecting some additional feedback on that. There wasn't too much commentary, but some folks did ask if we would look into that a little bit. So we're collecting some information on that. But for this season, the north zone, October 24th to 25th, which is 1 week before the regular duck season zone. We do recognize that this is the same weekend as youth deer season. When we were asking the Migratory Game Bird Working Group and other staff, the preference kind of was let that conflict be as it is. If we were worried pushing the season another week forward, there would just be not enough waterfowl opportunity for those kids that really wanted to waterfowl hunt. And so they might have not as good of an experience. So we chose to leave that one as it is. For the middle zone, October 31st to November 1st, and then for the south zone, November 21st to November 22nd. So again, a week before regular duck seasons for all of them. For 2026, 27 bag limits, no changes from 2025. In 2025, we did increase the pintail bag limit from 1 to 3 in accordance with some new models from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that established an interim pintail harvest strategy. So this will be the second year of that strategy. We don't have anything formal yet, but from staff that were entering harvest collected on our conservation areas, they all indicated that they didn't see very much of an increase in pintail harvest at all. Some of them, like in southeast Missouri, were a little bit more surprised since we get more pintails and more variety down there, but they indicated that they didn't really notice any changes to harvest on the pintails. And then the possession limit, again, is 3 times the daily bag limit for all the species. So goose status and season recommendations, so I'll go through kind of the various goose populations and then come back to the goose season recommendations, since we kind of all set them all as one season. So to start with, Canada geese, so the flyway kind of manages a few different populations of Canada geese. The green, orange, and blue populations used to be considered separate subpopulations. Those have since been lumped in 2016 and 2020 into one subpopulation. So that is called the Southern Hudson Bay population of geese. And then we have our temperate breeding, or what most people think of as the resident geese throughout the rest of the flyway. So in Missouri, this kind of drives our early goose season. So our Missouri Canada Goose Breeding Survey, we fly this survey around the state in April or late March, so I'll be flying that the next couple of weeks. 2025, we estimated about 32,000 Canada geese in Missouri. It's down a little bit from 2024. Prior to that, we hadn't really gotten a complete survey flown since 2021. As you can see, there is quite a bit just over time, a lot of fluctuation in this estimate. It's just kind of the nature of how the survey is conducted and how kind of Canada geese distribute themselves across the landscape based on spring weather, honestly. And then different people have different thoughts on Canada geese breeding in their ponds and whether they want them or not, so that kind of shifts the goose population as well.
Are migrating through Missouri, and how many are living here full-time now?
This estimate is just those that breed here in the spring, so the estimate of these geese are the ones that would stay here year-round. Or they might go down to Arkansas if we get cold enough, but these are the ones that are here, versus the other state populations and estimates, which I'll get to in a second, are more the ones that migrate through.
Okay, thank you.
So next is that kind of subarctic breeding population of Canada geese, the Southern Hudson Bay population of Canada geese. So the blue is a mainland estimate, and then there's a small population on an island, and they kind of separate those two out, but then combine them for estimates and harvest strategies. So over the past couple of years, we have been seeing declines of this population in Missouri. I will say that about 25% of the bands that get harvested in Missouri and reported come from this population of geese that are banded in the Southern Hudson Bay population. And Missouri and then some of the some of the Great Lakes states are the main harvest states of this population of Canada geese. Historically, we had some special Swan Lake goose zones back in the day that was kind of targeted at this population of geese. Next, moving on to white-fronted or speckled-belly goose population status. This one is using band analysis and harvest estimates to get back at a population estimate. So it's a little bit different kind of than the rest, where it's not really a survey that gets flown, but it's based on harvest and band recoveries. The latest estimate was 2.75 million white-fronted geese, so back up from that dip in the previous year, but kind of back up to where the population's been for a few years now, kind of that same range. Next is the light geese population status, so this includes snow and Ross's geese. We went up, this population went up as well from 2022 to 2023, so there's a year delay with the harvest analysis that has to be collected and conducted. So this latest estimate was 7.9 million snow geese, and then the Ross's geese went up as well. Those yellow lines indicate the thresholds for the snow goose population, and then the Ross's goose population, and that kind of pertains to regular season as well as the conservation order in the spring that we have for them as well. And so with that, for the federal framework, so for Canada geese, we're allowed 107 days of hunting, and that can occur anytime from September 1st to February 15th. Maximum 5-bird daily bag limit. For the white-fronted geese, it depends on your daily bag limit and the number of days you can choose. But we kind of stick with this 88-day and 2-bird bag limit. And so for our recommendations, for the early Canada goose season, the recommendation is October 3rd to October 11th. That gives us a 9-day early goose season with a daily bag limit of 3 Canada geese and then a possession limit of 9. And then that goes into our 88-day regular goose season, November 11th to February 6th. And so with that, we get 2 white-fronted geese, 3 Canada geese, and 20 light geese. And there's no possession limit on the fall light goose harvest. And so what that kind of allows for with that closure on February 6th of regular goose season is it allows us to then open our spring conservation order. And so getting into our light goose conservation orders, all other waterfowl seasons must be closed. So we can't have anything else open. So for the 2026-2020 season, recommend opening February 7th through April 30th. And shooting hours are 1/2 hour before sunrise to 1/2 hour after sunset. And a lot of the things that are prohibited, such as electronic calls and unplugged shotguns, are legal methods of take for that light goose conservation order. And then with that, our extended falconry season. Again, very few people, but it allows them an extended season, February 11th through March 10th, 2027, the recommendation there. So a summary of all those recommendations, since I know it's a lot. The season dates for the rugless migratory game birds are the same recommendations in the same seasons as 2025 and 2026. The September teal season dates and limits similar to 2025, just a little adjustment so it opens on a Saturday instead of the same random day of the week, I guess, give more opportunity for opening day and weekend. The goose season dates and limits are the same as 2025 and 2026. And then the season dates and zone boundaries for the regular duck season and youth duck seasons adjusted according to those 2026 to 2030 season date formulas and zone boundaries. The bag and the possession limits are the same for everything, and except for an adjustment for those changes to duck season, the falconry season recommendations are the same. And so with that, I will take questions.
Well done, Reed. Commission, any questions for Reed?
I've got a bunch, but I'm gonna try and keep them short. Can you talk a little bit about the technologies that evolved to more, I'll say accurately, but let's say ease counting waterfowl? As the director said, I flew over a bunch, saw a lot of movement. Somebody'd stick their head out the window and go, there's like 250,000 right there. It was a cloud, okay? And I trust we have very experienced people, okay? And so I'm being very simplistic here, right? Can you talk about the technology that enables us to provide good, accurate counts?
Yeah, so I guess for one thing, the fall waterfowl counts are very different than like the spring breeding survey. The spring breeding survey, you're flying along on transects and you have a certain width and you're counting birds essentially that come off of individual ponds. And there's usually, a pair or a couple pairs on those ponds. And then those get coupled with ground counts where select portions of those segments, ground crews go out and they estimate, again, kind of another estimate to kind of correct those aerial counts. So it is a lot different than flying over our conservation areas. That was a lot of what my master's project was trying to better estimate waterfowl counts on our conservation areas using aerial imagery and drones or planes and artificial intelligence. I was working in Missouri with drones Fish and Wildlife Service has been doing stuff with offshore seabird surveys and artificial intelligence counts, and there's been people in Louisiana doing drone stuff similar to what I was doing on WRP properties. They've been doing a lot of like thermal stuff with broods in the Dakotas to kind of estimate recruitment and brood survival and nest success. At this point, it's really all in development and all in research. Arkansas Game and Fish just recently put out a proposal to basically work on a continuation of my work to kind of push it across the finish line. My work kind of said, yes, this is feasible, and yes, we get good estimates, but it wasn't an operational product. It wasn't, like a software package a biologist can just download and install. So their goal is to kind of continue building off of what I did and push it across the finish line. So right now, there's a lot of different research projects going on. There's a lot of potential. There's a lot of remote sensing potential for habitat as well, from satellites and new deep learning models and things like that. It's kind of still, I guess, in a sense, in its infancy. A lot of research going into it, but nothing's become really operational
Great.
yet.
May I ask another question?
Of course.
I may have misunderstood your slides on the Canada goose populations, but it struck me that you said there's roughly 36,000 sort of year-round breeding pair or individuals in Missouri, and then you look up to Canada, and it's just like 120,000. Is that okay? Yet we're enabled to shoot, and then, of course, the other geese are counted in the millions, yet we can shoot 5 Canadians per day when there's hundreds of thousands, and 1, 2, or 3 per day when there are millions. Why that juxtaposition? I fear I'm misreading the slides.
So I guess the one that I didn't include in the presentation is the other, I guess, the local giants across the entire Mississippi Valley. So I included Missouri since that kind of is what we use for our early season, and then I included the Southern Hudson Bay since that's kind of the limiting factor on our kind of regular goose season, since so many of those birds come to Missouri. I know we're about 1.5 million-ish as far as just the overall temperate breeding, giant Canada geese. That distribution varies. Illinois has a bunch of them. And so some of the reasoning behind that framework is kind of the states kind of have to have an opportunity to be able to manage nuisance Canada geese or problem Canada geese, like downtown Chicago. Not that you can hunt in downtown Chicago, but so some of it's to give those states that extra flexibility. There's not, most states don't use 5 birds per day during the regular goose season, but some states use quite a few in the early portions for kind of controlling their local breeders.
Great. Thank you.
Good questions. Any other questions for Reed?
I have just a couple of quick questions, Reed. You had a couple of slides on snipes, rails, woodcocks, and the seasons for those. How plentiful are those birds, those varieties of birds? I frankly don't tend to see them or hear much about them. This may be a question more appropriate for Deputy Director Jeffries and where he would find those birds in his travels across the state during bird season.
See, I thought snipe hunts were something you send people on and there weren't any snipes. That's what I got.
I
Classic
think
kid.
Deputy Director Jeffries might be the largest predator for these game
Could be.
birds.
I won't say where I know 1 or 2 of his honey holes may be, but where could somebody go to find a woodcock or a rail or a snipe in Missouri?
Yeah, so woodcock are, they're what we call, they're an upland shorebird. It's kind of unique. they're very related and very similar to snipe, but they live in kind of some of your denser, younger forests that have some more shrubby or smaller saplings habitat that are a little bit denser together. I've never successfully found any in the fall in Missouri. I have some spots that I go out in the spring and I can see plenty of them. They don't come back through the fall. But that would kind of be more common in the southern part of the state, throughout the Ozarks and things like that. The snipe and the rails, you can find those on most wetlands. Honestly, a lot of people don't really know what they're looking for to find them. For example, since we're in Columbia, Eagle Bluffs down the road, there's a few people that rail hunt out at Eagle Bluffs throughout the fall, and they're the Sora rail in the fall are fairly abundant out there. But those two are, the rails and the snipes are wetland species.
Good, well, thank you, that's good to know. The duck seasons, zones, dates, and so on in your workshops, and you did a very thorough job throughout the season pulling all that together. And I know you said this, but just so that everybody understands. Those boundaries, those formulas for those dates are pretty much baked at this time.
Correct.
Short of U.S. Fish and Wildlife doing something proactive, but that's what we have, and
Correct.
the dates are driven by the formulas that you've articulated and this commission has approved, so,
Yep,
yeah,
that is correct.
Yep.
thank you.
Good points. Any further questions for Reed?
Excellent.
Thank you, Reed, very much.
Thank you, Reed. Madam Chair, at this time I request commission approval of 3 CSR 10-7.440, migratory game birds and waterfowl season limits as presented by Reed and detailed in your regulations packet.
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. Madam Chair and members of the commission, as you know, last year the department initiated a review of non-resident hunter participation, including seeking public input. As a result of that review, the department increased non-resident permit prices to bring them more in alignment with neighboring states, and most recently reduced the turkey bag limit for non-resident hunters, excluding non-resident landowners, to 1 bird to help reduce non-resident hunting pressure on turkeys. The department has continued to explore options to address concerns and impacts associated with non-resident hunter participation, specifically related to non-resident deer hunter participation. The department will be seeking additional public input beginning in April to assess options to address non-resident deer hunter participation, with the intent of bringing initial recommendations forward for commission consideration at your May meeting. Madam Chair, unless you or members of the commission have questions, this concludes the regulations action items and my regulations committee report.
Just one clarifying question, Deputy Director Conley. Some of the things that will be brought forward in May could be effective for non-resident deer hunters this 2026 deer season, correct?
That is correct.
Excellent. Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you. At this time, we'll transition to 2 informational presentations. Commissioners, as you are all well aware, chronic wasting disease management has been a topic of substantial discussion for over a decade. While the conversations and management approach have adapted over the years, MDC's objective has been to protect the long-term health of the deer population by working to keep CWD infection rates low. Simple to say in a statement, but much more difficult to put into action with varying challenges facing us today. While active management actions put forth by the department, hunters, and partnering landowners have been successful at keeping infection rates low in some areas, the disease continues to slowly spread on the landscape, and over time, we have struggled with landowner and hunter support for management tools, such as targeted removals. We have worked with hunters and landowners to develop additional tools, such as the Hunter Harvest Initiative, but to date, these tools have been inadequate to achieve disease management goals. It's also been challenging to manage deer populations with the presence of CWD and effectively break through misinformation for a foundational understanding that this work is about maintaining a sustainable and healthy deer herd. It's the work of all of us, but none of it is easy. Simply ignoring CWD's long-term impacts would be irresponsible. Do we want maximum harvest opportunities today or a sustainable deer population in the future? How do we work together to ensure the future of our deer herd? As you know, winter targeted removals were paused last December through an open letter to our public to provide space and opportunity to work directly with hunters, landowners, and partners on answering these hard questions. We must acknowledge the threat that CWD poses to the sustainability of our deer herd, at the same time recognizing the need for a collaborative path forward. No decisions have been made on what the path forward looks like because we are looking for that collaboration, communication, and cooperation through intentional and continued public engagement. Commissioners, at this time, I'd like to introduce Public Involvement Coordinator Jennifer Hoggett to provide an update on CWD public engagement, which will highlight actions MDC will be taking over the next several months to work collaboratively with hunters, landowners, and partners on developing that collaborative path forward. Jennifer, the podium is yours.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
Appreciate the opportunity, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Director Sumners. Today I want to present more than just the CWD public engagement, and Laura, thank you for that wonderful introduction. Set this up very well. I really want to talk more about a roadmap because it's not just the engagement that we're doing, but really it's about how do we alter this course? How do we ensure a positive outcome for our deer herd far into the future? Engagement's one piece of multiple pieces that must come together and must work in synchrony. They help us reach our goals, and the goal in this is sustaining the herd for the long term. When we're contemplating the need to evolve, it's always useful to contemplate where we've been. We have to learn from the things that haven't worked well, and we have to capitalize on those things that we do know did produce success for us. So let's take a look first at where we've been. So since discovering CWD in our wild herd in 2012, we've had a sustained effort to reduce deer densities in a targeted way. We've seen a range of local support, as Deputy Director Conley pointed out, since our efforts began. Some areas have had strong support since the very beginning. In other areas, getting that support has been challenging. In most cases, though, we have seen support decline since the beginning of our targeted removal efforts. This past fall, we hosted open houses around the state to hear from our citizens on our deer management efforts and CWD specifically. Attendance was not what we would have hoped. We did have great conversations with those that attended, but certainly attendance was lower than we would have wished for. And though there were likely various reasons for the lower attendance, we have to use that as another learning point and consider that in order to receive useful information from our citizens, we must consider adapting our engagement format to ensure effective participation. Oh, that was me. During the open houses and through other feedback methods, we've increasingly heard from the public that they have questions and concerns, not just about the targeted removal efforts, but also about a wider range of issues related to the disease. And we have to take a step back and ask ourselves, why is that? What's going on? Our staff here in the department, our director, our deputies, our deer biologist, his team, others that work on deer health and management, we're all passionate about deer. And likewise, the citizens we serve, we know they're passionate about deer. We all share that passion, and we know that we also share a commitment to seeing a healthy deer herd in Missouri through our lifetimes and beyond. So we know we must create space to answer the public's questions, to ease their concerns, and then chart a path forward together again as partners in conserving the white-tailed deer that we all value. So that leads us to where we are today. So we are in a pause. In December, the director announced this pause in targeted removals, primarily because he understands that we need the space and the time to chart a new path forward. This pause is giving us a time to be thoughtful about how we renew partnerships with the citizens we serve. We now have the space also to develop additional tools and strategies to earn support from our public and create a future in which we are working alongside them to ensure a healthy herd. But what's really important is, how are we using this pause? That's a big question, I think, on everyone's mind. First, I want to share with you what we're hearing during the pause. As the pause was announced, the director additionally invited members of the public to give us feedback. We received 108 emails with comments, and these comments spanned a range of opinions and topics reflecting feedback that we'd been getting leading up to the pause as well. People indicated that they see the pause as an opportunity to rekindle conversation and provide education. And we hear through multiple sources, and even from our own staff too, that the challenge of CWD is all about relationships and trust. People want to work with us, but they express that they need better ways to tell the facts to their own friends and family. And they need additional resources when they want to help manage the deer population by taking additional deer, such as increased opportunity with Share the Harvest. Listening to feedback during the pause is vitally important, but just as important is what we're doing during this pause. And by that I mean what we're doing to adapt our strategy and rebuild support for tackling CWD and ensuring a healthy white-tailed deer herd. One of the major activities that we've been doing during the pause is taking time to adapt our communications. We hear from members of the public that CWD is a hard disease to understand, and it's hard to then communicate concisely with friends and family the threat that it poses. And you know what? We agree. CWD is a unique threat on our landscape, and it behaves differently from other diseases that we've long known and understood. So over the past year, the department has been working with a trusted partner, DJ Case and Associates, to develop a communication strategy with the intent of answering some of the most commonly asked questions, providing straightforward and uncomplicated information about CWD, and increasing understanding and trust with our citizens. Products of these efforts so far are those straightforward core messages that can be easily shared with the recommendations for a communication strategy to not only better inform others about CWD, but also to generate conversation about these potential paths forward to manage the disease and ensure our herd remains healthy. So most importantly, though, is where we're headed. I want to talk about some specific actions we're taking to open this new chapter on CWD management and ensure its success. First, specific actions related to communication. One of the other points of feedback we hear from citizens is that it's tough to quickly locate information about CWD generally, and specifically information about their county and what's going on. So we're working to improve our CWD webpage, most importantly, ensuring it can be found quickly and easily by the public. We're also working on focused communication that gives information about the topics on which we get the most questions. In addition, we're focusing on formats that emphasize visual communication, infographics that quickly and visually confer information or tell a story. And finally, our communications team is working hard to integrate our strategies using ours and others' platforms to ensure we have a coordinated and consistent message that's being distributed and communicated. This type of integration has been proven to amplify reach, and it gets information to those that are seeking it. And last, but certainly not least, engagement. So I want to tell you how we're planning for our upcoming engagements. As I said earlier, engagement isn't the only piece of this puzzle. It's part of multiple pieces that have to work together. Similarly, engagement itself is multifocal. We need to share information and coordinate efforts both internally and externally. Internally, deer management is a cornerstone of what our agency does. The white-tailed deer is one of our state's most valued resources, and we reflect that by dedicating a lot of our internal resources toward it. By doing that, though, it means that we have a lot of programs, we have a lot of teams, and we have a lot of people working on different parts of the deer management puzzle. So we're redoubling our efforts to ensure our multiple internal groups are coordinated. We're gathering feedback, we're sharing information through multiple internal engagements. Likewise, as we receive additional public feedback, we'll be working on a cohesive internal strategy that's responsive and inclusive of our citizens' input and ideas. Public engagement, yet again, is multi-pronged. Our overarching goal with public engagement is ultimately building a stronger connection with the public we serve and increasing public support and involvement in our CWD and deer management efforts, our shared efforts. We know social media is a prominent information sharing platform, so we're engaging influencers and those trusted voices active on social media to both gain their insights and see where we can partner to get our information to diverse audiences. I told you at the beginning that we did not see the attendance at the open houses that we would have hoped for, and we're using that as a learning experience and adapting how we engage the public. We plan to take conversations directly to local audiences through regional listening sessions. Unlike the open houses from this past fall, we will seek out local voices to come have a conversation with us. We'll be asking our local staff to reach out to folks they know and they interact with locally to assemble a wide range of perspectives that generates honest and open discussion. The sessions will be formatted to have conversations with local citizens about CWD questions and topics that are important to them. We additionally want to know how they think we can partner together in taking action to ensure a healthy herd for generations to come. The listening sessions are not planned as a one-time meeting either. I want to be clear about that. These will be ongoing conversations at the local level to maintain strong relationships that keep our department and the public working together toward shared goals. And I wanted to have one final slide here. Folks sometimes like to see just the facts, like what's going on. So here's concrete next steps for what we're doing with engagement. Earlier this month, I mentioned those content producers. So we met with several social media content producers. Much like our other public feedback that we've heard, we heard from them additionally that we have to look for ways to connect. We have to look for ways to educate. And then we have to provide resources to make partnership easier and successful. Attendees agree that local listening sessions provide a successful engagement path forward. We're targeting May for the regional listening sessions, and hopefully this fall, we hope that those are already bearing some fruit, and we're defining where we have common ground with our local citizens that help us establish some shared goals forward to tackle CWD in Missouri long term. And finally, as I said before, opportunities to engage the public locally will absolutely continue. So before I wrap up, I just wanted to kind of offer a personal anecdote and some observation that I've had. I didn't grow up hunting, so I came to hunting later in life, and it was through a trusted mentor, someone that was, important in my life and taking me and teaching me those things. And I bet everyone here has a similar story of that first hunt or that first harvest and how important and kind of special that was. I think once you get into hunting, for me, it's certainly true, there's just nothing like it, and you're immediately addicted. It's like, wow, this is something I've never experienced, and it presents something completely different than what I've ever experienced. The sights and the sounds and the smell of a cedar from a fresh rub or a scrape is just something you don't experience in nature the same way that you do with other activities. In fact, I've often told people there's so many additional things you see in the woods hunting that you would never see otherwise. It makes you sit quiet and observant for hours at a time. And actually, I said that wrong. It doesn't make you do it. You do it willingly. You're out there, you want to do this thing. You want to know more, you want to see more, you want to understand everything about what you're hunting. And for deer, that means you want to know their habitat, you want to know their refuge areas, you want to know their patterns, and on and on. And you can study all of that. You can build a knowledge base, but to truly gain wisdom, you have to put in the time. You have to sit quiet, and you have to observe, and you have to listen. We, in your Department of Conservation, we're scientists, definitely. We're good at studying, we're good at building knowledge, but we're more than that too. We're also passionate hunters who value the whitetails the same way you do, and our public does. I see this path that we're on and this engagement we planned as our chance to re-engage our citizens by listening, by being observant. And if we do this well, we'll all come out with a shared wisdom, a wisdom that sets us and our deer population up for success for many, many generations to come. Thank you. With that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Jennifer. Commissioners, any questions for Jennifer?
I don't have a question, but I just would like to thank you for that, the whole report, but in particular, your testimonial at the end. That should be turned into a social media spot in and of itself.
Thanks.
Excellent. Yes, Frank?
Marvelous. You know, my comment is to everybody out there, and to you. Take refuge in all of the good that we're doing, not all the good that you think we ought to be doing, right? This organization does more good across such an incredibly diverse landscape, resource base, natural history, et cetera. Take refuge in that. That's one of the reasons why we're here. I didn't join this because I wanted to do something in deer. I wanted to do something across the board, and that's why most of us are here. So I understand the body blows that all the heat from CWD has given. And Jennifer, I expected you to show up in body armor. But the reality is that we're doing a tremendous amount of good. And at the end of the day, we're still public servants. We don't get to tell the public what to do. They get to tell us what to do. And I like that, actually, even though we know a lot more, because we're pretty deep in a lot of this, we still serve our constituents. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here, is I love the public service aspect. So I encourage us, again, to focus on all the good we're doing and not the good we're not. This is going to work. There are solutions out there that are unforeseen. And this is not something that we're going to run away from. It's not something that we're quitting. But I think the wisdom behind the pause still holds. And I congratulate the team who put up with all of that, because I know there's a tremendous amount of frustration because we're passionate about this. But I have a great deal of hope, and I know I'm not alone in that. We'll find a great way forward and this is foundational, engaging with the public, taking the heat out of the discussion, right? Being patient. Don't create artificial urgency, which will be a decades-long fight. And so I just congratulate you. Thank you for that. It was a great
Appreciate that.
presentation.
Yep. I hide the body armor well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll just close and say sometimes the most complex and the hardest things are the most rewarding work to do. So encouragement to the entire team. And thank you, Jennifer, for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jennifer. Commissioners, lots more conversations ahead of us, right? But at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Tyler Blake and Justin McGuire, who will be presenting on camping on department areas and unstaffed shooting ranges. Tyler earned his Bachelor's of Science in Biology from Truman State University in Kirksville, Missouri, before joining the department in 2017. Tyler has had the privilege to further both aspects of MDC's mission through his various positions within the department. He now serves as the statewide recreational use coordinator, where he coordinates public use policies and regulations, manages the special use permit system, and leads interdisciplinary work groups to advance outdoor recreation opportunities for all Missourians. Justin joined MDC in 2017 as an outdoor skills specialist after several years in law enforcement and corrections. He was promoted to his current role in 2019, where he oversees MDC's hunter education and shooting range programs. He serves on the Board of Directors of the International Hunter Education Association and leads national shooting range initiatives as the chair of IHEA's Range and Shooting Sports Committee. Justin holds a Bachelor of Arts in Criminal Justice Administration from Columbia College. Gentlemen, the podium is yours.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Director Sumners. I have the privilege to talk to you this morning about camping and what it's like on our conservation areas. I'd like to start by sharing what it's like and then talk about what challenges our agency is facing, and then finally share some recommendations that we think will help. So one of the ways that the Conservation Department connects people to nature is by providing camping opportunities, and we try to make that as easy as possible. Camping on our areas is free, there are no reservations, and it's first come, first serve. We currently allow camping on over 320 conservation areas. With that, camping on our areas is typically primitive, we don't have running water, we don't have electricity. We sometimes have a privy or gravel pad available, and we do have a few restrictions. So right now, our regulations restrict camping for up to 14 days at a time and no longer than 30 days in a total year. And then we do allow group camping, and then any group that's larger than 10, we ask that they acquire a special use permit. So camping is one way that we connect people to nature, but camping often supports other outdoor activities such as nature viewing, hunting, and fishing trips. And so we find that most camping actually occurs during spring and fall turkey seasons and during firearms deer season. Unfortunately, our staff routinely deal with all manner of camping challenges. We have campers who don't comply with area regulations, who overstay that 14-day limit, or camp where they're not allowed. We also have reports of campers who try and reserve a spot by setting up their camp early. So they'll drop off their RV or their camper or their vehicle, leave the area for a few days, and then return back to the campsite during the weekend when they intend to actually camp. And right now, we don't have a good system in place to track exactly how long campers are staying. So our staff and public often encounter safety concerns related to camping. We routinely discover illegal and criminal activities, such as drug use and people hiding from law enforcement. This causes the public and staff to not feel safe and often leave our areas. And we have reports of some social service organizations recommending conservation areas as free camping opportunities for people without housing. And sometimes that leads to environmental concerns. We have abandoned campsites that have RVs, tents, gear, and trash left behind, and even human waste issues. As you can see from the photos, we have several examples here. Abandoned vehicle with trash inside of it, fire scar with trash inside of it, outside of where we asked that there be a fire. And then the one on the far right is actually one of our agents found that the camper was digging a hole to bury their dog who had passed. So we have all manner of situations and encounters that we come across. So the graph on the right shows the number of camping violations over the past decade. And as you can see, the number of camping violations has sharply increased. Our agents have two codes that we use to track camping violations. One is for camping outside of allowed areas, and the other is for camping longer than the 14-day stay. So this chart is combined violations for both of those codes. As you can see, in 2018, our agents issued only 13 citations and 14 warnings. The first sharp increase happened in 2019, and since then, our total violations have continued to increase to roughly 700% of what it was in 2018. So I would like to point out that these violations codes don't include other violations that also occur on camping, with camping. So we also have issues related to littering, vehicles being off-road. We have warrant and drug arrests and more, and those numbers are not captured in this graph. So in response to the growing challenges associated with camping, we're proposing the following recommendations. We would like to require a low-cost permit for all camping on conservation areas. We would suggest a $5 permit that would be valid for 5 days and 4 nights. So the dates would be determined by the permit holder when they purchase their permit. And they would still cover a group of up to 10 people. And they can camp on any conservation area that allows camping. And they can find those areas on our website. And then we would still require a special use permit for any group larger than 10. We would integrate this permit with the current permit system so they can obtain it online at a permit vendor or over the phone. And we also recommend adding a provision that prohibits personal property from being left unattended longer than 24 hours. So this will help us ensure that campers are actively using the site and not reserving spots before busy weekends. And then lastly, we would recommend adding a provision that requires all sleeping units to be labeled with the name and phone number or the conservation ID number of the permit holder. And so this would help us identify campers and ensure that they have a valid camping permit if they're not actually on the campground when they visit our staff, or when our staff visit. Because we often find that it can be hard to connect with campers, especially when they're off using the area and enjoying it. In conclusion, we want all Missourians to be able to feel safe and enjoy the outdoors responsibly. We are currently looking at ways to expand camping opportunities in our conservation areas, and we believe that implementing these recommendations would provide better and safe camping experiences, improve monitoring of unwanted activities, allow better tracking of how long individuals are camping on conservation areas, and then help deter illegal activities. Thank you. Next, Justin will present on unstaffed shooting ranges.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Director, thank you for this opportunity. MDC operates 37 unstaffed firearm shooting ranges on department-owned or leased properties. These ranges are free to use and are open 30 minutes before sunrise to 30 minutes after sunset, every day except posted maintenance days, which are usually Mondays. And like camping regulations, any groups over 10 people require a special use permit. In 2015, MDC and 4-H partnered on a research project that surveyed unstaffed shooting range visitors and gave us more information about who uses our ranges. The results allowed us to quantify that our ranges have a significant impact on Missouri shooters, providing safe, convenient shooting opportunities close to home. The results also showed us that the total economic benefit of our ranges likely exceeds $10 million in 2026. Since that study, firearm ownership has grown sharply, with an estimated 160,000 new Missouri firearm owners in 2020 alone, according to data from the National Shooting Sports Foundation. When these ranges were designed and built, the intent was to accommodate hunters who were practicing for hunting seasons. Over time, the usage of our shooting ranges has changed. The popularity of home defense, self-defense, and other high-volume recreational shooting has significantly increased maintenance requirements. The high volume leads to more frequent repairs or replacement of target stands, refacing backstops, litter pickup, and many other tasks. Simply put, our ranges were not built to handle the types and levels of shooting that are now the norm. Additionally, incidences of intentional illegal range misuse are on the rise. Some users ignore posted range rules, disregard safety, damage infrastructure, and create an unwelcoming environment for the public. Protection branch staff report an increase of over 100% in warnings and citations due to range misuse in the 10 years between 2016 and 2025. In response to these challenges, MDC statewide and regional staff have worked diligently in recent years to make safety improvements. Some examples are no blue sky designs and berm improvements at multiple ranges to discourage shooting over backstops, as seen here at Perry Conservation Area in Kansas City region. New, safer target holder designs, as seen here at Sugar Creek Conservation Area in Northeast region. And as seen here at Busick State Forest in Southwest region, improved perimeter boundary projects. Yet issues persist. Despite MDC efforts, as a result of significant and ongoing damage, MDC has been forced to close some unstaffed shooting ranges, including most recently, those at Pleasant Hope and Pigeon Hill conservation areas. This is evidence of repeated, intentional, illegal acts that cause substantial safety concerns and costly damage to public resources. These images are of projectile strikes in the walls of a privy at the now closed Pigeon Hill Conservation Area shooting range. This is more evidence of illegal activity that has become all too common on department areas: an intentionally destroyed target holder system on the left and a rules sign on the right. It is for these reasons that we are working on recommendations for permit requirements to help address these challenges. We're developing a proposal to require a valid small game hunting permit to use unstaffed firearms ranges. We're considering a small game hunting permit because it is valid for the entire permit year as opposed to other seasonal permits. Other options would require additional regulation and enforcement complexity and the low cost of a small game permit. Existing small game hunting permit exemptions would apply, such as youth under 16 and those aged 65 or older. This would not apply to staffed ranges or unstaffed archery ranges, but this would apply to both residents and non-residents. This proposal would help ensure that users of unstaffed firearms ranges receive firearm safety training through the hunter education requirement. This proposal would also serve to enforce a sense of ownership and buy-in for these important public resources by everyone that uses them. And finally, this proposal would give conservation agents another tool to improve public safety at MDC ranges. Here you see the timeline for both the camping and shooting range permit proposals. These recommendations would come before you for initial consideration in May of this year. If approved, the Secretary of State public comment period would be open from July 2nd through the 31st. The Commission's final consideration would take place at the September 2026 Commission meeting. And if approved, the regulations would become effective in early 2027. With that, Tyler and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Excellent. If I could get started, Tyler, I think I have two questions for you. And first would be, do we have any understanding as far as density of use for our conservation areas for camping by geographic region?
Sure, that's a very good question. We do not currently track that. We have some estimates based on assumptions from staff on how busy our areas are. And we do have mobile location data that we can use with that. So we know that we have estimated number of about 175,000 visits to camping by the best of our knowledge. Like I said, that's very loose numbers, a lot of estimates, but that's the number we've got. We don't know geographically how that's spread out.
And then the recommendation or kind of the conversation starter you've presented today is to introduce a $5 camping permit. Do we know what our cost is to administer that permit?
So from my understanding with the permit system, We already have a contract with them. In order to implement a new permit would be very little. It already be absorbed into the budget that we have for that.
Excellent. And then, Justin, a question for you. So the timeline's still up. If the commission were to approve in September, what would be the proposed effective date for the small game permit requirement at unstaffed ranges?
I'm not exactly sure. It is dependent upon the Chapter 5 and Chapter 11 regulations processes and when those things would go into effect. It would either be January or March 1st.
Excellent. Commissioners, any questions for Justin and Tyler? Yes, Frank?
So, Justin, really quickly, what kind of options are available for shooting ranges for long-distance shooting, defined as you wish?
Very few within the department. So we do own and operate 2 or 3 shooting ranges that allow users to shoot over 100 yards. But again, only 2 or 3 ranges that allow that opportunity. On the private side, there are other options for the public to be able to utilize longer distance ranges.
Great, thank you. So Tyler, I don't want you to misunderstand this question as being skeptical. I kind of like data.
Sure.
Okay? So you estimated about 175,000 camping visits?
So I guess I should clarify a little bit. The way that we capture our mobile location data is if I were to camp for 3 days, mobile location data would capture that as 3 separate visits, right? So we have no actual way of knowing how long people are staying. We just know that we can estimate that there's been a camper, somebody camping on one of those areas that many days.
So you can determine by the data that somebody was on site 3 days, but is that what I'm understanding?
I don't know that we can get to that level of individual data,
Right, okay,
if that makes sense.
yeah. So, now, is this across our roughly 1,000 conservation areas?
Yes.
Okay. So I just, and recognizing what you said about the uncaptured additional violations, et cetera. We're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 175,000 visits with something less than 200 violations, but let's say we add that by a multiple of 3, okay? 600 violations, I don't know how you'd extrapolate. I'm just trying to get my own head the severity of the issue. Now, the severity can be far greater because there are safety violations, there are environmental issues, I get that, okay? But I was just trying to get my head around, spread across 1,000 conservation areas, 175,000 visits,
Sure.
200, 300, 400 violations.
Sure. When you look at the numbers, it doesn't seem like a lot.
Camping is not allowed on all 1,000 conservation areas.
Sorry, no, camping is not allowed on all 1,000 conservation areas. Thank you. The mobile location data was captured on all areas. I apologize for that.
That's
yes.
very helpful. That's very
320 about 320 or so areas that allow camping on conservation areas.
Very cool. Okay, thanks for that. Director, thank you very much.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes, Ray?
Thank you for the presentation. On the areas that are allowable in our conservation areas, the 320 areas, can a camper wander into the woods and put up a hammock between 2 trees and call it a campsite, or are they designated, cleared out areas?
It is variable, depending on each area. Some areas have specific campsites with gravel pads. Some areas are more open to, we have just a mowed area. You can go in and camp anywhere kind of in that vicinity, like a parking lot. And then we do have a handful of areas that allow what we would consider dispersed camping or open camping, where you can do exactly that. You can walk in. But right now, it's kind of scattered across the state, and there's,
No, I
yeah,
I
so it's
understand that.
variable.
I wonder if that is ascertainable from the website. If I had a hankering to go deep into the woods, if I could find that out from.
Yes, if you know the specific opportunity you're looking for, you can do that in the places to go section of our website. There's an advanced search filter.
Can you take another quick moment to compare, maybe in contrast, the state park camping experience with our opportunities? Because I do think there is some primitive camping. You mentioned the slabs for the trailers and so on.
Sure.
But just for the benefit of people watching on or who.
Yeah, so, our areas tend to be for, those who are maybe a little more experienced or willing to, rough it a little more. So we don't have developed campsites in a way that we have water or electricity. The most we would have is maybe a gravel pad and a privy, available on some areas, not all. In fact, most camping opportunities do not even have a privy available. Yeah, so it tends to, there are no structures, there's no lodge to rent or anything like that.
Thank you. That's what I thought. And we present an opportunity to truly camp, like one would do as a Boy Scout or go out in the woods with their dad or whatever the case may be, or grandpa. So I like that.
Commissioner Clausen.
Are there, rules about what kind of targets people can use on, these ranges, the unstaffed ranges particularly?
Yes, sir. It's only paper targets attached to the provided target stands.
Do you have issues with people, like bringing out pieces of steel and things like that and shooting at them on our ranges?
Yes, sir, all the time, in addition to washers and dryers and TVs and refrigerators.
So people literally bring them out, they haul them, they drag them out into the range basically and then shoot them there, huh?
Yes, sir.
Is there anything, I remember going to Scrivener, which is in Cole County. It's been a couple years. It was before I was a member of the commission, but it was right before deer season, and it was chaos out there. I mean, there were all kinds of people, and the only thing they had in common is they all had guns. I'm not sure they all knew how to use them,
Our ranges do get very busy at times, particularly early fall and in the spring.
Is there, I guess the issue is, for safety purposes, is there any, you counting on everybody just to use the honor system and police themselves?
We would rely on our protection staff to enforce the rules if this regulation was presented and passed. Yes, we would hope that people would take that to heart and complete their hunter education and purchase the permit that would be required, and then beyond that, we would rely on our protection staff to enforce that.
These are, I know your staff's spread out pretty good, and these are unstaffed ranges for the most part, right?
Yes, sir.
And like I said, there was a lot of people with guns, and I'm not sure, I doubt they all been through hunter education or had any kind of training just by the way they were being used out there. But just a comment.
Do we have, hi Justin. Do we have awareness of what other states are doing? We are not the only state with a shifting demographic who is using firearms in different ways. What are other states doing?
Yeah, we're not alone in this at all. Every state is dealing with this exact same issue. Some states have implemented a shooting range permit in title. Some, like Kentucky, just implemented within the last few weeks a new requirement for a small game permit to use their shooting ranges. So this is a proposal in development that has precedent, and other states are viewing it in the same way, that we can get education in the hands of folks that are using our ranges to provide them some firearm know-how and some etiquette education.
Excellent. Any further questions? Something we'll continue to discuss in the future. Thank you for the informational
Very helpful. Thank
presentation.
you.
It's wonderful. Deputy Director Bond, we are now done with the regulations report. Let's move on to budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. I'll be presenting the next item on your agenda, the financial summary report for fiscal year 2026 through February of 2026. If you'll move your attention to the revenue variances for this, through this month. Total revenues for the first 8 months of fiscal year '26 were 1.1% lower than the first 8 months of '25 and 2.1% below expectations for this point in the fiscal year. Conservation sales tax receipts were 2.7% higher than the first 8 months of FY '25 and in line with expectations. Permit revenues were 4.7% higher than the first 8 months of fiscal year '25 and 1.6% above expectations. The number of monetary hunting and fishing permits sold in the first 8 months of fiscal year '26 were 1,819 higher than the previous year. Federal reimbursements were 22.5% lower than this point last fiscal year and 12.1% below expectations. Federal reimbursements for fiscal year '26 through February represent 13.5% of total revenues. Federal reimbursements in FY '26 to date are below expectations, mainly due to the timing of reimbursements as well as a delay with the federal government on our indirect cost proposal. Other revenue sources for the first 8 months of fiscal year '26 were 5.6% higher than this point in the last fiscal year and 2.1% below expectations. If you'll turn your attention to the expenditure variances, total operating expenditures for the first 8 months of fiscal year '26 were 5% higher than the first 8 months of fiscal year '25 and in line with expectations. Operating expenditures include personal services, expense, and equipment purchases. Personal service disbursements were 8.9% higher than the first 8 months of the previous fiscal year and in line with expectations. Expenses were 2.3% lower than the first 8 months of fiscal year '25 and 5% below expectations. Equipment disbursements were 3.3% lower than the first 8 months of fiscal year '25 and 12.8% above expectations. Again, as I've mentioned before, we purchased some of the replacement equipment much earlier in the year than prior years, which explains most of the variance. Total capital disbursements were 20.8% lower than the previous fiscal year through February and 18.7% below the budgeted amount at this point in the fiscal year. Capital expenditures include land conservation and partnerships and construction. Large payments in this time period include Shell Osage Conservation Area Golden Anniversary Wetland Renovation Phase 2, Roaring River Fish Hatchery, and a number of land conservation and partnership agreements. Total disbursements for the first 8 months of fiscal year '26 were in line with the first 8 months of '25 and 3.8% below expectations. This concludes my remarks, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, any questions for Deputy Director Bond? Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Moving on to the Infrastructure Management Branch, welcome Jacob.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, Director Sumners. I have the next item on the agenda. It is an action item for the Commission. It is a recommendation for authorization to enter into a contract with Tri-Smith Construction LLC of Carrollton, Missouri for construction of the Kinzora Conservation Area Lake Dam Structure Replacement Project located in Edgerton, Missouri at a total estimated cost of $2,413,354.50. It is further requested a contingency fund of $242,000 be authorized for unforeseen conditions or any other changes necessary to complete the project. Total authorization requested is $2,655,354.50. The project was designed by the Infrastructure Management Branch in collaboration with consultant Great River Engineering. Their estimate for the project was $2,026,555.00, and 2 bids were received for the project as shown in your advanced materials. Tri-Smith Construction LLC has been in business for 17 years. They have completed previous projects with the Missouri Department of Conservation, including the Perry Memorial Conservation Area Range Relocation Project and Taylor's Landing Access Replacement. Infrastructure Management Branch recommends the bid as submitted by the low bidder be accepted.
Jacob, the contract says, or the proposal says 200 working days, correct?
That is correct?
And we did receive multiple bids on this project.
Yes.
Commissioners, any other questions for Jacob? I will now call a vote to approve staff's recommendation. All in favor, say aye. Oh, I'm sorry. I would entertain to have a motion to approve staff's recommendation.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Now I'll call a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Moving on, we have our quarterly update as outlined by our trust agreement with our Conservation Employees Benefit Plan. We welcome Andrew Barnes.
All right, thank you for having me. Sorry, I'm kind of new to the Jeff City stuff, so.
You're gonna do great.
All right. So for the trust plan that we have, the fourth quarter performance of the Conservation Employees Benefits Plan Trust Fund, we finished strong with the fund balance increase approximately 1.8 million when you compare the 24 to the 25 plan years. With recent actions taken by the Trust Fund Board of Trustees along with the Commission, the fund balance increased from an estimated 6.7 million to 8.6 million. And the plan experienced increases in medical premiums, and with the coverage rate tiers were adjusted to better align plan income with expenses. As anticipated by these changes, the trust fund has been able to absorb recent rises in claim costs, with medical claims have continued to rise at an estimation of about 2.7 million, and prescription claims estimated at just shy of 1,959,000. Plan income increased approximately 1.4 million when comparing that 24 plan year to 25 plan year. With recent efforts made by the Board of Trustees and the Commission have strengthened the plan's fourth quarter performance and the ability to remain a self-sustaining, self-insured plan. And to address rising health insurance claim costs, the Board, with the Commission's support, has taken the following actions for the 26th plan year. The second and final year of our dependent coverage tier ratio realignment occurs this year, which should result in about a 6.2% plan income. Anthem was awarded our third-party administrator contract for 2026 with anticipated plan savings approximately 1.7 million annually over the UMR contract that we had previously. We still offer Medicare Advantage benefits. The design should allow for options to enhance member benefits, decrease the commission and member contributions, and remove claim costs due to fully insured plan design. And then lastly, the CVS Caremark replaced Express Scripts as the pharmacy benefit manager with an estimated annual plan savings of approximately $700,000. And so these significant vendor and rate changes are anticipated to grow the fund balance, allowing for a better income to expense ratio. Additionally, the Board of Trustees, along with the plan's consultant, WTW, regularly we review the industry trends, legislation, and plan design changes to ensure compliance, best practices, and cost control measures in administration of the plan and the trust fund. So, do you have any questions for me?
Thank you for your service as chair of the trust board. We really appreciate it, and it's important that we have employee participants with strong representation on that board. So thank you. Commissioners, any further questions?
No.
No.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Isn't he supposed to like sing his high school fight song if this is the first time?
I will move on from that comment Deputy Director Aaron Jeffries, a report from the Realty Committee.
Good morning, Commissioners. Opportunity to provide a realty update, and then we'll move to a legislative update. But I will reserve some time in September to take any commissioners on a rail hunt for their first time and probably their last time. Once you do it one time, you probably never want to do it again.
All right. Count me in.
Commissioners do have a couple action items here, seeking commission approval in one motion to purchase 3 Nature Conservancy tracts, Mountain Vernon Prairie in Lawrence County, Washashi Prairie in Jasper County, and Pawhuska Prairie in Barton County. Acquisition will help simplify regulations and provide additional recreational opportunities for the public. Commission?
Do I have a motion to approve staff recommendation?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? Aaron, could you detail our staff's familiarity with these pieces of property, their engagement, and what these properties offer to the commission?
That's a great question for someone who used to manage these areas, actually. So all 3 of these tracts are Remnant Prairie. We've had a long-term lease with the Nature Conservancy for several years on several tracts. Under that lease agreement, these areas were pretty much for nature viewing opportunities, but they also provide an invaluable opportunity for our staff to work with businesses for native seed harvest. So there's quite a network on these remnant prairies for native seed harvest that then goes into a lot of the restoration projects on department land or on private land as well. If you've ever had to plant pollinator habitat, Commissioner Clausen, you know from experience, that stuff's not cheap. And that's where a lot of the seed is coming from, is our remnant prairies across southwest Missouri.
$175 a pound.
That's a good bargain. So by the department acquiring these will be open to statewide hunting regulations in some cases.
Excellent, so it expands that opportunity as well. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor of passing, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commission. Also seeking Commission approval to transfer approximately 384 acres in Holt and Atchison County from the Nature Conservancy to the Conservation Commission as a part of the L536 levee setback project. The department currently manages the property under a cooperative agreement with the Nature Conservancy. Commission?
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Maybe, Aaron, if you would, we have had a lot of discussion about some opportunities in that neck of the woods in northwest Missouri, specifically around the river and levee setback and flood control. Can you just share a little bit about how this piece of property adds to that?
Sure. As many of you remember, the 2019 flood devastated a lot of northwest Missouri on the Missouri River, really all the way down to Jefferson City with levee blowouts. And this has always been a problematic area up in northwest Missouri where the river is really constricted by bluffs on one side and levees right up against the river. So a variety of state and federal agencies, NGOs have gotten together in several states to look at some potential levee setbacks. This was a project that was led by the Nature Conservancy. Gus Raker and Jennifer Batson, our former deputy director, were heavily involved in this project. It serves as an excellent example of where we had landowners, levee districts, and drainage districts all working together with county commissioners and state and federal agencies on a common goal of a levee setback. So to the north, we have the L550, which is a similar setback project. That's at the mouth of the Nishnabotna River where it comes into the Missouri River. That's a tricky word to say 10 times. Currently, that's with Ducks Unlimited, Nature Conservancy, and other partners. The department did provide significant funding for that project, and at some time, we hope to have a levee setback there. But the Corps of Engineers, Department of Natural Resources, and other partners have several projects that string all the way down to Jefferson City as potential setback projects.
Excellent, thank you, Aaron. All right, commission, all in favor, say aye.
Let's ask one
Oh,
question.
yeah, sure, absolutely, sorry, Ed.
Define what you mean by levy setback. I just want to make sure we understand what we're talking about, because I'm not sure I do.
Yeah, so, well, Commissioner, just right here in Jefferson City, there is a potential levy setback project that's proposed right around Jeff City, around the airport and the industrial area. As you know, the levee's right up against the river.
Right.
What they're proposing is to have a setback to allow the river to breathe when we have flooding. So using that area as additional storage to minimize impact downstream. Make sense?
Yes.
Yep.
Excellent. I will call the vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Commission. Last, seeking Commission approval to dispose by online auction approximately 11 acres known as Crane Roost Access in Butler County.
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this disposal? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Oh, thank you, Commission. We have a lot of people on the Realty Committee in Southeast Region that have been waiting for the day for the opportunity to dispose of Crane Roost, as we've had to go through federal processes since this was purchased with federal funding. So
Did you
probably a
think
lot
it-
of silent cheers in the back.
Did you think it might die for lack of a second?
Well said, Commissioner.
Well, we could blame the chair for not giving us a break during this meeting and trying to power through. And Aaron, we're going to keep going.
Yep, we'll make it short here, so. So we are halfway through the 2026 legislative session. We had spring break last week, as expected. TJ and I had an extremely busy week at the Capitol with the House, basically finishing work on the operating budget. As you all are aware, the House has provided the commission with an additional $6 million of the commission fund to administer Dolly Parton's Imagination Library program. That was started here in Missouri in 2023, I believe. We are fortunate to have Margie Van Dieven, our education branch chief, who was the commissioner of education at the time, that started that program. That $6 million was provided in our budget for shipping, but also to contract out the writing of conservation youth books. The $6 million is exactly what it costs just to ship the books to kids here in Missouri. So a rather expensive program. We are blessed with the Explorer magazine, which goes to over 250,000 households here in Missouri at probably around 60 cents an issue. So really a great bargain. It's free to families. It doesn't take a lot of taxpayer money. We'll be working with both the House and Senate to see if we can have a compromise to move that out of our budget back to education where it needs to be. However, I have challenged education to reach out to DESE to see if there's a way that we could partner to potentially include the Explorer magazine subscription card when kids get to the age of 5, so that they can continue that educational opportunity, especially related to conservation. As you're also aware, this week the House did complete markup on the capital improvement bills, removing $6 million from maintenance and repair in House Bill 18. That money is absolutely critical for the unknown flooding and opportunities that Mother Nature presents to us each and every year. So that money is used for when HVAC systems break down, when we need roof repairs, when a pump goes down at a hatchery or wetland area, or we have major flooding and a boat ramp gets knocked out. So we'll be working with the House, hopefully, to see if we can get that restored. And then, if not, we'll work with members of the Senate. On the bright side, next week does have a few fun opportunities. As on the 31st, we do have Conservation Day at the Capitol. A lot of affiliates come in to meet with legislators to talk about conservation. That afternoon, the Legislative Sportsman's Caucus is having their annual fish fry here at headquarters. So we'll have fishing rods on hand, staff will be on hand to help people fish, sometimes for the very first time. really a neat opportunity. And looking down the road, also next week, we have a tree planting ceremony with Governor Kehoe on the Capitol grounds to celebrate the 250th anniversary of our nation. And then shortly after that, of course, we have the Governor's Youth Turkey Hunt, where our staff put on a hunting clinic, and the kids and their sponsors have an opportunity to have dinner with the governor at the Governor's Mansion. So hope you're able to participate in one or several of those events. But with that, Commissioners, I'll conclude my remarks.
Any questions for Deputy Director Jeffries regarding the legislative report?
Great report.
Excellent. Thank you, Aaron. If I would please invite back up Deputy Director Laura Conley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. It's my pleasure to bring forward 2 recommendations for the Missouri Master Conservationist Award. The screening committee met in late January to review nominations received during the previous year. The 2 nominations presented today were both unanimously approved by the screening committee and subsequently received director approval. To be eligible for consideration for recognition, the individuals nominated must be a member of the Missouri conservation community who meet at least one of the following criteria. 1, performed an outstanding act or developed an innovative idea or technique which advanced conservation in Missouri. 2, whose dedicated service over an extended period contributed to major progress in conservation in Missouri. Or 3, whose contributions to conservation resulted in lasting significance at a local, regional, or statewide scale. If approved today, presentation of awards will be at a future Conservation Commission meeting or other appropriate event. The first nomination recognizes Mr. Tom Weckenborg of Callaway County. For over 60 years, Tom has made conservation contributions and education a routine part of management of his now 930-acre farm. Tom practiced natural community habitat management in an era when this approach was in its infancy and showcased this work to resource management professionals. He also shared what he learned and used his land to demonstrate these practices to other landowners and producers. His goal has been to do all he can to help restore the ecological balance and integrity of the land he stewards, which he has accomplished while also informing and educating others on the conservation practices he implements. Tom has either written or been featured in multiple magazine and newspaper articles over the years, including in the Conservationist magazine. These have highlighted his successful conservation efforts and encouraged and educated others to also implement these practices. Tom is always open to new and innovative ways of doing conservation work. He has often been on the cutting edge of methods and practices, many of which were conducted out of his own pocket in the early years prior to cost-share incentives. Highlights of Tom's dedicated service over the decades include warm season grass restoration, glade management, butternut tree propagation, stream bank revetments, development of wetlands and building installing, and maintaining numerous bird and wildlife nesting boxes. These efforts are detailed in more specifics within your packet. Madam Chair, I request approval of Tom Weckenborg as a master conservationist based on his decades of commitment and dedication to stewarding our natural resources and sharing his insights and passions with others.
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Great candidate.
It looks like he's done a lot.
Let me just say
Indeed.
congratulations.
Impressive.
Well, we haven't voted yet, Ray,
We have not, but in advance,
in advance.
trying to sway the vote here.
All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
With a congratulations.
The second nomination was submitted for Mr. and Mrs. Dan and Connie Burkhart. Sincere and passionate, Dan and Connie Burkhart's impact on conservation in Missouri is far-reaching. From the Katy Land Trust to Magnificent Missouri, their efforts to conserve land and water for public use has inspired many to think bigger than themselves. Their efforts with conservation easements provide a voluntary way to protect land from future development, protecting critical habitat and Missouri's agricultural heritage into perpetuity. To further the reach of conservation, the Burkharts have self-published a variety of conservation books to bring the outside in. With beautiful pictures and words, their books inspire people to find joy while experiencing Missouri's amazing natural resources. The Burkharts have also been heavily involved in the preservations of buildings of historic significance along the Katy Trail waypoints, hosting What's Out There St. Louis, offering both weekend and day trips so people can explore nature close to their home, and supporting the founding of a Conservation Political Action Committee. Even though they are engaged in many endeavors, Dan and Connie take time to support other conservation organizations as well. They not only support the Missouri Conservation Heritage Foundation, but they also support the Johnny Morris Institute of Fisheries, Wetlands, and Aquatic Systems. Madam Chair, the Burkhart's tireless efforts to preserve, promote, and improve our state will have a lasting impact for generations. I request approval of Dan and Connie Burkhart as master conservationists as described and further detailed in your packet.
Do I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Where is Magnificent, Missouri? I've never heard of that before.
I believe it's something along the Katy Trail, but I don't know the specifics on it.
In the
That
Marcusville
covers a
area.
pretty good range there.
It's,
Anybody know what county it's in even? I don't.
I think it's Katy Trail, so pretty
I have
statewide,
a
but
phone.
then
I was
there,
reaching for his phone.
are we
Oh, it's
getting
like a
nods from the
town.
back of the room? Gus?
I think they're,
Louis to Cottonwood County.
Thank you, Gus. And then Pierce Store, yes, is located there along Highway 94, and they've built a very vibrant community around that little historic.
Marthasville.
Yep. Excellent. Okay, I will call the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
With a congratulations.
Congratulations.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Laura. Are there any other matters of interest? Hearing none, I consider us adjourned.